Stand by. Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see a link down below. And if you, yeah, sorry, you can't say anything once I say stand by for everybody watching. You can't say another word. Like no one make any more noise. I can't get the lift off if you do that. So don't do that again. Okay, we'll edit it after this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a link down below. Just click on that link and you'll end up in Zoom. And then once you're in Zoom, then click on that link that you'll see in the chat and you'll end up in Mukana. And that's where you can ask questions and vote on those questions. And you really become a producer for the show. The whole show is about what you ask. So your questions, your voted up questions are what we're going to cover. We cover the stuff at the beginning a little longer than the stuff at the end, so it is important to actually vote on the questions. Now, the first hour is spent talking about general subjects, anything that you have around virtual or media production. Second hour is something we're going to spend a little bit more time on today. We're going to talk. We're going to do ruthless reviews of our videos. So we're going to look at our exactly how this all looks. We're trying to keep on pushing our quality up as we get ready to go into the fall with kind of more of a broadcast look. So we're constantly picking at it. So we'll pick at it today on Thursday. And then Friday, we're going to talk about USDZ. This is a 3D format that is slowly becoming a video format because it's incorporated into Motion and Final Cut, and we'll probably incorporate it into other things over time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And on Saturday, we will be talking about education. We do that every Saturday morning. Saturday's a little different. We have Q&A from 7 to 9, and then education from 9 to 11, because there's so much Q&A and so much education to talk about. So we'll that's how that splits out. And then on Sunday, of course, is just general discussion. If you think you can answer questions during all of these, or any of these subjects feel like you feel like you might know some answers here, simply come in early, 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we will check your mic and make sure that you're ready to go. If you're not sure, you come in as early as 6, and you just kind of test your system and make sure it works. Okay, Bill, let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Fair enough. Doug Johnson has our first one, or actually Talak Lopez Waterman has one, and it's about Doug Johnson, who released a video about BitFocus Companion not being reliable, and he's interested in what other people's thoughts are about that critique.
I haven't used it enough to know whether it was. I know that generally with Stream Deck, I haven't put it into production because into production that affects. I don't use Stream Decks in production that affect what the viewer will hear or see, and that's mostly related to the fact that the number one reason when someone hits unmute and they don't unmute, it's because they're using a Stream Deck. So, and what that has what that means for me in my head is I can't use that in production. And so until that becomes seamless, which it happens about 3 or 4 times a week, I just go, I'm going to wait for a little while longer. Go ahead, Chris.
Hold on, I have to figure out how to use my Stream Deck. It is my understanding that some of the people that we are watching, like A2Z Productions, other names are escaping me. I think there's a lot of people using Companion in live situations and heavily depending on it, also with Stream Decks. I would be very curious to have somebody do a deeper dive into what Doug has seen, because I think he's highly opinionated, which is cool, but I think his facts might be wrong.
And I don't know. And what I primarily use my Stream Deck for is Unity, and I'm constantly whacking it a couple times to get things that I want. And I don't know whether that's the Stream Deck or Unity, but that it's never always right on. So go ahead, Jeffrey.
So first of all, I'm reading this question about Companion, not about Stream Deck, and I
think they're related.
It can be related, but it also. Companion can actually be used without a Stream Deck, and that's an important thing. Now, with that said, on the Stream Deck side, of course, Stream Deck was meant for their Elgato infrastructure, so you have to have the Elgato lights and the Elgato card, and it'll all work perfect. They're doing stuff outside the Elgato infrastructure, which you can do, and that'll cause problems. I have a program where I have to go out and come back in. On the Companion side, once again, there's a lot of third parties coming in and attaching stuff to it. And of course, that's going to make Companion work different. They're doing their best for free program. So,
I don't think it's the software. I mean, my personal opinion is that it's highly probable that it's connected to a consumer level closure on the on the buttons. Is it's a lot less expensive than what we're used to. Go ahead, Todd.
I didn't understand those words, consumer level closure.
The contact closure on the button is consumer, not professional, and it's just it's a matter of how it how stable it might be.
I've just found Companion, which I only began to use, and I delayed it for a while because it was kind of a little bit too brain intensive for me, but because I really wanted to test David Joshua Ford's stuff that he's been working on. I really, really wanted to try it. So I did, and it's worked absolutely flawlessly until yesterday. And I can tell you, and I love troubleshooting.
What changed yesterday?
A couple things changed. I think some people on the panel will remember I was having some problems with slowness on my computer. Called Apple. I did a complete reset, which I hadn't done before, the shift control option. Everything kind of went back to normal, which was great. So that's the only thing that has really changed. Nothing changed.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
And then what changed a lot right there.
I know, right?
That was like, yeah,
okay. So there we go. Reset.
I only pulled the engine out and put it back in. I mean, it was
I couldn't, my problems with this have not been Companion problems, because if I launch Companion, the emulator works just fine. All of David Joshua Ford stuff works just fine. But the Stream Deck kind of got bricked. So I finally got it back this morning. So I'm a little bit more of a happy camper now. But Companion and Stream Deck have been working really great for me recently.
What I will say is that's a good lesson in why in production, a lot of times, once we get something running, we always say, don't change anything. Like once you've rehearsed everything, even if it doesn't feel like it's connected to what you're actually doing, we're done. We're done with what we're going to change, because you pull at one thread and you don't know where that thread goes all the way, truly how all this stuff interacts. Go ahead, Brian. I can't hear you, Brian, but your sync is amazing. Oh, there you go.
Must have used a Stream Deck to switch.
Yes, there's a Stream Deck in there somewhere. All right. Next question.
Moving on to Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas. And Rupert says, what is the real world latency through an ATEM Mini from HDMI input to HDMI output? And can it vary depending on how much work the ATEM is doing or across different models?
I haven't measured it. I think it's about a half a frame. It's not actually, it will be the same all the time. Like no matter what the ATEM Mini is doing, it's on a clock. And so it's going to deliver all of those things within a frame. So I have never seen it change. And that's that's one of the advantages of a hardware switcher, is it tends to clock out and just hand you frames the way you're going to hand it. Now it may stall for a second. We've had that happen in a variety of places, but we haven't had it. I haven't had it change during something. There is a difference in the inputs. Channel 1 is at a lower latency than the other channels. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends on the input. It depends on, because they have frame synchronizers. It depends also on if all of your inputs are synchronized. If they're all driven off of a common reference frequency, gen-locked.
Well, that'll make a difference.
Very, very low latency. Otherwise, it's got to take at least a frame to VSync.
Yeah, I don't think that the ATEM Minis will gen-lock, but you're absolutely correct that the ATEM SDI signals, SDI versions, will absolutely be lower latency if you gen-lock everything that's connected to them. Carl?
Yeah, so I looked at this carefully online, and has to be a minimum of 1 frame, because it doesn't have gen-lock. So there has to be at least a 1 frame minimum latency, and a maximum of 2 frames if you're adding on any graphics and stuff like that. So it needs an entire frame before I can add a graphic on top of it. So if you have your VSync is out by, let's say 0.9 of a frame, that's 0.9 of a frame, and then that 0.9 of a frame has to catch it. Then they're all resynced into essentially a gen lock within the ATEM itself, and then a whole other frame has to come in before a graphic can go on top of that. And then it gets pumped out. So minimum 1 frame, maximum 2 frames.
And I'd be curious to see where that's being measured, because I also think that one of those frames is being lost in the going into the computer. The digitization process, I think, oftentimes will change it. So we notice that there's 1 or 2 frames that get lost on the way into a computer from almost any digitizer. So the process of digitizing it, which is kind of amazing that it does it in a 30th of a second. Next question.
Chris Taylor in Winter Park, Florida is next. And Chris asks, during the show, after a question is asked, many online producers make comments or apply opinions in the chat. Do you have any thoughts on a panelist scanning the Mukana chat for good comments or suggestions?
we've thought about it. I think that where we look for those is usually when the panelists don't have a clear answer and something popped up in the chat that did it. But a lot of times we look at the chat as something that is for the panelists to talk amongst themselves, and this is for the show. The problem you really get into from a show perspective, given that 90% of the folks that are not in 90% of the folks that will watch it in the first week, or maybe more than 90%, but at least 90% will not be in the live event, that creating something that kind of keeps on dragging out is not a great listening experience. And so that's oftentimes what we're thinking about. Go ahead, Stuart.
I should just like to point out that for myself, and I think most of the panel, we're scanning the chat as it happens anyway. Watch for our eye line to see, and we're watching questions and chat and voting on them as we go, because that's what you want us to do.
And it is something that is a good reason to jump into Mukana, is you get that added level of content that's coming to you at the same time as the video. So what we're not really trying to do is trying to merge both of those together. The idea is that there's just another thing that's going on at the same time that you're watching the video. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I also watch the chat, and a lot of times, a lot of the panelists here, if we're under a time constraint and we're having to move on, a lot of times I will post an answer that wasn't addressed during the panel discussion in the chat because there just wasn't time for it. And unfortunately, most of the time that happens, there's not time to even go back and discuss it, so because we've already moved on. So if you want to post a link or something, it'll get scraped usually and put into Discord. So it'd be good to put a link in there because it'll get scraped for each show.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas is up next. And Rupert says, LiveU is one of the latest members to join the SRT Alliance. The Alliance now has over 500 member organizations. Elsewhere, Vizrt is today demoing NDI native and cloud-first live production. Is SMPTE 2110, Rupert asked, at risk of being overtaken?
Stuart?
Yes and no. No, in the broadcast and the major facilities, they're going to go for the standards compliant SMPTE 2110. For small, lightweight producers that have got to move often, that's where NDI and SRT is a real benefit. But again, it's the right tool for the right job situation. So it's a depends with a Mickey.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we'll have to see is where Blackmagic comes down on it. Blackmagic now is probably the largest installed base of video production, in sheer numbers. So if Blackmagic takes a direction, on this, it could have a huge impact on it. And I'd be surprised if they do NDI. I think it's more likely that they'll do 2110. But I think that's what we have to watch as well, because they're now the elephant in the room. It's amazing that I've been in this long enough to watch Blackmagic's booth at NAB continue to grow until it was pretty much the largest booth in the place, with the most number of people, and so and with the ATEM Minis, it's become a massive installed base. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Aeronov, Germany says, teleprompter question: could you use a mini laser beamer instead of a display to project the picture on a semi-transparent mirror?
I'm sure you could. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, that's not really how a mirror works. The mirror just reflects an image of, what's on the other side of it. The laser would have to project onto something that the mirror reflects. It doesn't. It's not a type of translucent material that you can project on and see an image. A mirror isn't, because what goes in comes out. So I'm not sure what the question really, if anything like that could ever be done, because mirrors don't work that way. Partially reflective mirrors don't intercept the light, they reflect the light.
Go ahead, Carl.
So simple answer is physics, and that is no. So you can't put a projector into a mirror, then into your eyeballs and see something. All you'll see is a bright flashing light from the projector. So in cameras and stuff, we use ground glass. So you can project an image onto ground glass, and you can look at that same ground glass at 45 degrees and see an image. But that ground glass will not allow you to use a lens through like a teleprompter. So ground glass is what we use if we want to project an image onto glass. So like in a DSLR, the image from the lens is projected onto a ground glass from a mirror, but you can't see through that ground glass and see the rest. So you can't use a projector as a teleprompter unless you're projecting onto a piece of paper from your position into a white card, and then you're seeing the white card reflected back again. So it have to be in and out. By doing that, you're going to be putting the projector directly into the lens as well. So that's a big no, because it's essentially just going to be a big bright light going to the lens because it's a half mirror.
Good, Stuart, and then Bill, but real quick.
Oh, real quick.
Yep.
Laser, mirror, eye, lawsuit, loss of vision. Don't do it.
Pretty much what I was going to say. I wouldn't play around with that a lot.
All right. Next question.
Moving on, TJ Asher is next from Minneapolis and here on the panel often, trying to review YouTube on my Apple TV 4K 2021 model and see if it really pushes HDR to my LG OLED TV. I don't see my TV tell me if it goes into HDR mode when it's supposed HDR video is displayed. Anyone else seeing true HDR from YouTube onto an Apple TV?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, TJ is having some technical problems. He wanted people to know that he doesn't do HDR all the time. I guess there's a way to switch it off and on. So my suggestion is just to switch it on and see if YouTube reacts differently.
And your audio is, it's like you're talking
Breaking
through
up.
a fan. Yeah, it's like you're talking through a fan.
Interesting. Okay.
It's cool. Anyway, it's a cool effect. All right, next question.
Moving on, Rupert McRae, this time in Dallas, Texas, says NBC will be using nearly 100 Sony cameras at the Olympics, including the HDC 3500 and 5500s. Was Sony an obvious choice, and would there ever be a time we may see Blackmagic cameras at an event like this?
Go ahead, Carl.
So I saw this press release. It's a dual press release from Canon and Sony. So Canon are going to provide the glass to NBC Olympic. NBC Olympic is a subsidiary of NBC Sports, and Sony are going to provide the cameras. It's not actually the cameras that Sony are providing, it's a service. So Sony will have all the cameras sitting in some building in Japan, and NBC staff will come and collect the cameras at the beginning of the day, use them in their studios, or have them set up in the studios. The cameras are slow-mo, so the way it works is NBC do not collect the actual sport footage that comes from the Olympics themselves. So the Olympic broadcasting people. So what all NBC are doing are interviews with athletes. They can do some slow motion stuff from the sidelines. They're allowed to do that. They set up with the photographers. So they are in the press pool with the photographers doing slow-mo footage of their own athletes in the stadiums. And they will be doing in-studio stuff for coming back to the United States for the NBC stuff. So those cameras are being provided by Sony and the lenses are being provided by Canon. The actual equipment that will be filming the athletes 24/7 is provided by the Olympic Organization Committee and their broadcasting arm.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I was just going to point out the event is a showcase of Japanese technology every time around. Blackmagic never had a chance.
These are very long turns of making decisions. Usually they're deciding what the hardware is years before they actually run it. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It came to my attention because Canon, the still photography arm of them, has almost an army of people at the Olympics. And I think other manufacturers who are key to this does the same thing. And literally there are hundreds of technicians who take care of every single lens you can borrow. If you are a serious photographer with national credits or international credits, borrow any lens you want for any venue and stuff like that. So this is really their chance to shine. And it's very much a promotional opportunity for these huge manufacturers.
Good, Courtney, real quick.
Yeah, and these are branding contracts with the Olympics. These are negotiated years and years in advance by the manufacturers Sony provides all the cameras on the so-and-so Olympics, so it's all negotiated in advance, not necessarily based on the technology at the time.
And I will say that the Blackmagic, for what we use it for, I mean, we've used it with, as many as 16 or 20 cameras, is great. It's not as scalable as the Sony infrastructure. Like just, when you're looking at an event the size of the Olympics, Blackmagic is still a little quirky, when it comes to what you need to make that work. And so that would be what are little headaches for us when we put things together. Oh, the comms don't really work in the camera very well, and this doesn't work over here, and everything else is not a big deal on our smaller events. It'd be a really big deal at the Olympics. So I think that Blackmagic still has a little ways to go when it comes to producing broadcast experiences at scale. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer here is up next, and he says, audience data question. What do you recommend to aggregate audience live stream viewing data across multiple social platforms for reporting to clients?
Go ahead, Liberty.
So off the top, I don't know of one that you can use independently. However, if you use Restream.io, and let me see if I can switch this over so that you can see it. There's an analytics component to it, so that Restream.io, you get up to 30. So it just really depends on 30 social media platforms. So it depends on which ones that you use to go into. Otherwise, just, you'll have to do it hand-wise. And I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but Restream or do it manually.
And the one thing that I have become more outspoken about is really, I don't recommend, we're going to do it. I know I'm going to say something and then we're going to do something completely different. As research, we're going to stream this show event by the fall. We'll stream it probably to most of the platforms. And it's mostly for us to just do analysis of, here's the same show across all of these things, and talk about it amongst ourselves as to which are the most, are the best platforms. Based on my experience over the last 10 years, I have some opinions about which ones are the best. And mostly because I don't measure view time. I mean, all I measure is view time. I don't measure, number of views or so on and so forth. And when you measure against view time, it gets pretty clear, which ones would do better than others. Go ahead, Ant.
Retention is what matters to most, not number of views. Retention
and interaction, and people being actually engaged. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd get attention and number of views, but can number of views, even if they're short views, eventually evolve into more attention?
Potentially.
Like, for example, I know Facebook is kind of a dumpster fire when it comes to long form video. People are scrolling too quick, too many distractions. But at least you get in front of people's eyes, and maybe they calm down and come over to YouTube or maybe even to Zoom to watch the whole show and get.
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. We just don't see it that often. Like we don't see that crossover. I mean, we just don't see that the impact of that in the way that we would think. We've done it for a lot of clients for years, and over years of doing it to all the platforms, we don't see a significant uptick. In the ones that matter. Where you're actually going to be able to get your message out. Because when you're, the problem is that it just doesn't. They just don't click over, and that often. Go ahead, Ant.
I think it depends on your platform. I can only speak to YouTube, but if you don't have any retention, YouTube will not serve it up. They'll push it down and push it away because they're just trying to keep you there.
Yeah. So, and so that's and YouTube is probably the best free CDN that is from a viewer retention, and mostly because it's a place that people go to watch your video. The problem with Twitter and many of the other ones, well, the one that has the highest average view time tends to be Twitch. And that, I think, has to do with the culture is used to just turning it on and leaving it on. Now, that's mostly with gaming, but Twitch folks talk about hours of average view time. I mean, they have incredible amounts of time, but they run things, and there's a culture there that expects that. And then you have YouTube. The problem with Twitch is that the comments are almost it's like hieroglyphics. So I know I'm old, so I can say that, but I feel like we're going back to Egypt, when we open those things out, because it's just all emojis. And so I wonder whether there was text before, and then the Egyptians were like, they started sending they started putting emojis out there, and then before you knew it, it was all hieroglyphics, and then we finally went back to text. So so I think that's the challenge is again, meaningful conversations make a big difference. And and I think that's what people are having a hard time with right now. YouTube has the fundamental problem of the way that the comments are, because they don't have a real name system. It makes it very difficult to have, once you get to any kind of scale, you pull out this kind of goo from the depths of the internet that, it's like you just dig down too far and then you ended up with something that you didn't want. So that's the problem with YouTube, but it still has the highest retention. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's. I'm still trying to think about hieroglyphics being all Egyptian teenager communication.
Yeah, that's what started as emojis. Thousands of years. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. Moving along. Douglas Carmichael. If I have a Windows workstation next to my Mac in my studio, connected via a local gigabit network, would there be any remote access tools I could use to connect to it and run 3D applications from my Mac screen, saving the complexity of a KVM switch?
I'll go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, any kind of desktop remote app should work. I put in a link to all the varieties of chicken of the VNC alternatives.
Go ahead, Carl.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, you want to control your Windows PC from your Mac, so you can have a simple setup. So I would be going to Boot Camp and just do a desktop remote from your Boot Camp Mac into your Windows PC.
Go ahead, Junaid.
So I've used the same situation for mine. I have my system sitting actually in the next room, a PC system, and I can access to it using Windows Remote Desktop software. So it's built into Windows already. Thank you.
Junaid's first contribution to the, well done. Very good. Thank you. All right, next question.
Moving on to Johnny Estias from Manila in the Philippines. And Johnny says, Audinate's DanteAV is now available. You can route the audio and video independently from the HDMI or SDI source. Patton also announced encoders and decoders with 4K 60 frame per second, 444 video, 8 audio channels, and HDCP 2.3. Is this the beginning of the end of NDI?
Go ahead, Carl.
Maybe not NDI. So this system's already been out for a little while. So this is ATEM, ATEN. So ATEN have this enormous networking HDMI switching. It's 4K 60, so it's pretty much 2.0. That's what all these specs line up with, is 2.0, 2.3 as far as HDCP. So this system has been out for a long time. It looks like Dante are just rolling their own version of this massive networked HDMI system. So it is a HDMI 2.0 networking system, and that's what all the specs point to. So it's nothing new. It's just I'm happy to see Audinate putting it into the Dante system.
It seems like it seems like it makes sense. I mean, they've spent a lot of time with the network, but when you look at it, it's like, oh, do I need another IP solution? Is the problem? I do think that the race is really between 2110 and NDI, but we'll see. 444 is pretty nifty for a data transport. Next question.
Nick Badd in the UK. I'm running audio into Discord stage when live streaming. How do I bring the caller from Discord into the live stream without them and the live feed and associated delays?
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
So Nick, if I'm getting this right, you've got people who are watching the show via the stage, via Dante stage, and they're calling in, responding to the show, which means they may not be duplex, they may not be listening on headphones. So they may be watching your live stream as they're calling you. And so when they're talking to you, you're hearing back your program at the same time. So you need to ask anyone who's calling in, who's watching the show, please be on headphones. So that way we don't get the program audio that you're streaming out through stage, through Discord stage, coming back to you. If that's what I'm guessing is happening there.
And you'll hear in radio shows, you'll hear a lot of people tell someone who's calling in to turn down their audio. So you have a mix minus, but they also have to. It's a behavior on their end as well. Next question.
Wallace of Austin, Texas, here in the panel for a long time. Is there an app or program that scrapes all the data from the Apple Health app, Our Ring app, Apple Sleep app, and so forth, and saves it as a worksheet so you can have a history of your health and exercise?
I think that there's a lot of permissions issues there. So I don't think that there'll be a third-party app that does that. If it's going to show up, I don't think Apple does that yet. But it definitely will not. Apple Health will definitely not integrate with anybody else's because it'll be a security hole. Go ahead, Adam.
You could use shortcuts to query the data in the Health app. Not sure if you can get sleep tracking yet, and you might be able to. And then you could add it to numbers or use the Google API to add it to your worksheet.
It's a great answer. It's good to have you here, Adam. I'm glad you came back. Bill.
There was a lot of presentations at WWDC this year about Health app. They're really moving heavily in that thing. So I think if you want more information on the I/O, maybe take a look at some of those. They're available for free on the Apple site.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it seems like Adam is the resident shortcuts expert.
Yeah,
I was blown away yesterday at some of the stuff you were doing with shortcuts. Very cool. Great. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, next question.
Chris Earl of Maitland, Florida is up next. And Chris asks, can anyone recommend a mobile hotspot solution for about a 1 month travel in the US, Pittsburg and North Michigan primarily? Will be a bunch of Zoom calls and in excess of maybe 4 hours a day, plus day-to-day software engineering duties.
I think I'd be more likely to use your phone as a hotspot than I would try to get a whole MiFi. Generally, buying the MiFi will come with a 1 year commitment. I haven't seen a lot of MiFis that we can get without that. So, yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there is one that I've used. I wasn't super happy with them. Well, one, because we were in the pandemic and I paid for it for 6 months, but I had a Verizon and a T-Mobile and an AT&T from unlimitedIRL.com, and it is truly unlimited, so you can go bananas. It's about the AT&T one, if I recall correctly, was $125, and the Verizon was like $175. So you just pick yours, and they send you the device. They'll FedEx it to you the next day. So unlimitedIRL.com, and I'll put it in the chat.
That's great. Next question.
Mark Giuliani of Alexandria, Virginia. Up next, I have noticed when using a longer HDMI cable with an ATEM Mini Extreme, I have to connect to input 1. Other inputs don't seem to display the video. Are others noticing this?
Go ahead, Carl.
If your HDMI cable is over, let's say, 15 to 20 feet, then yeah, the number one input on all the ATEMs is a special input. It essentially can do a lot more things than the others. The others seem like to be like in slave mode to HDMI 1. And you've got to remember that the ATEMs also have a signal going back the other way down the HDMI signal. That's camera control. Even if your camera isn't a Blackmagic camera, it's still sending a signal saying, is there a Blackmagic camera at the end of this line? It looks like maybe HDMI 1 can ignore a delay in sync if it's over a certain length, where the other ones are a bit more susceptible to not doing that. We all know that the HDMI 1 is a special kind of input.
We do, and when things aren't working in HDMI 1, the first thing you do is you move it to HDMI 2. So it can go either way as far as that stability goes. That said, also, it's just, you also want to look at how thick your HDMI cables are that are going long. It actually makes, the diameter actually makes a difference as the cables get longer, because you're actually still pushing something through copper unless you move to fiber. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he asks, in my music production, I've had a hard time translating what I want to create, for example, energetic, calming sorts of music and so forth, into which specific tools to use to achieve a goal. Would apps like Melodics, and he has a link there, help, or would books and or a teacher be best?
Go ahead, Carl, and then Brian.
So if you're looking at creating types, I'd look at sample libraries for one, for like, we're actually talking like samples of a song, not just of an instrument. So like beats and stuff, if you're looking at different styles of music. Also listen to lots of music. The more music you listen to, the more your own vocabulary music will grow, and you'll be more confident to put in different motifs in your own songs.
Go ahead, Brian.
So I haven't used Melodics. Looking at it is teaching you to play an instrument. That's not going to teach you, I don't think, how to do different moods. And to Carl's point, listen, but then try and replicate it. Find something that you said that you think sounds calming and try and make it yourself, or energetic and make it yourself. Listen deeply. What's the bass doing? What's the drums doing? That will help get you to that place of making a sound or energy that you're looking for.
And Todd?
This is, of course, a larger scale question. I almost yield my time because both Carl and Brian have said it beautifully. But the other thing is to think that whole notes indicate calm. Synth pads with whole notes, synth pads over many, many measures indicate calm. Quick things and rhythmic things, 16th notes and 8th notes, are going to give you more energy and activity. So it's almost kind of like drawing frames around, the musical tools of notation, of like even in your mind, can also take you into these places. And if you just isolate your boundaries a little bit, put boundaries around things and say, I'm just going to work with this type of material, you'll find your way into some of these different feelings as well.
Next question.
Comes from Fred Eric Eckert again in Bad Herrenum, Germany. AWS question, so Amazon Web Services. Can you route an elemental link input from AWS Media Live to vMix running on an AWS instance?
All right, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you would want to do it with their new CDI. I haven't done this yet, but I have done it with the link going up and then RTMP over to a live stream running in the same subnet. So the important thing to remember is that the instances need to be located in the same data center for the lowest latency. So if you want a CDI one, unless you want to pay bucks to transfer across, let's say, a data center in the east versus the west. But the important thing is that you can do it. You just really, for the lowest latency hop, you either want to do it with SRT or with CDI.
Next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana says, since you can sidecar an iPad and have an HDMI out with the USB-C adapter into the ATEM, what is the best way to minimize the latency?
Go ahead, Carl.
So yeah, if you're sidecarring into an iPad and then taking that HDMI out of the iPad, so just like, and you're actually taking that feed out of the iPad, you're going to have latency because sidecar itself has maybe a 1 to 2 frame latency running at 60 hertz. And then again, going into the ATEM, you're going to have another 1 to 2 frames. So you may have about 4 frames of latency because that sidecar itself just has latency built in.
Next question.
Theo Mack in Thousand Oaks, California says, in order to create and stream shows in Atmos immersive audio, will we all need a Dolby RMU in our signal production chain, or will there be a way to embed the Atmos bitstream into the feed for watchers to consume and render at their end?
Yeah, so you won't need an RMU to do that. I mean, because it'll add a lot of latency to the process. There's a couple different ways of doing it right now. None of them are incredible. The one that will handle Atmos right now from the individual channels is the ATEM Titan, which is about $45,000. And if you don't have the ATEM Titan, then you'll end up using something like a Linear Acoustics 5291, which is it's basically manages all those channels, and it can convert the 16 channels that you would need. Because typically, when you're streaming this, you're not necessarily packing. When you're streaming to Atmos or streaming to immersive, you want to think about it streaming to immersive. It's not really, you're not really streaming Atmos, at the moment, because the metadata, it's hard to transport the metadata over anything. so it turns out that with both Vision and Atmos, one of the challenges from a live perspective is managing the metadata that oftentimes will go through all of that stuff in real time. And so generally you're still working in channels. Those channels then get converted to EAC3, and then those EAC3 goes out to, those are converted and streamed. So we're still in early days in that area. And so I think that hopefully in the fall or by the end of the year, we're going to see some solutions that make it a little easier to manage that. But you really want to think about channel-based surround immersive for the current state of live. I think that eventually we'll get to a point where all the metadata is supported, but that's really a 2110 issue of being able to support the metadata that's required to move things around. So in the short term, typically when you're thinking about immersive, you want to think about 514. So you're basically building a 514 mix, and then from that 514 mix, you'll end up converting that either in your encoder. So the ATEM Titan will convert that 514 into Atmos or into a 5291, which again is a $25,000 box. But Elemental already does most of this in their big boxes. We have some big elementals that will do some of this. So we can assume that eventually, somewhere in the future, we'll see it in Media Live. And then if you take the UHD, the new link, and you combine that, it's pretty useful. Anyway, next question.
Chris Widener's next. And Chris says, has anyone here tried Demo Pro screen annotation? Seems kind of similar to Alex's solution, and he's trying to use it with Sidecar.
Haven't seen it. Anyone else has seen? Nope, you stumped us. So we'll have to take a look at it and come back. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and Douglas says, I've been starting to learn MA3 programming with this video, and he has a link there, and it seems MA takes many steps to do tasks like cue or effect creation. Coming from audio, how can one become a more efficient programmer?
I am a more efficient programmer. Plan. I'm just getting back into coding. I've been out for many years. I can say that in discussions with coders and the stuff that I do is I tend to throw things at the wall very quickly and then throw all the code away and then do it again. And I wouldn't say that's an efficient way to do it, but my approach, and Adam maybe give us a better sense, but my approach has always been try to make it work, then throw all the code away, then make it work better, then throw all the code away, and then sit down and write it and write the app and annotate it, and then work with that code. But usually I kind of do a revision. Adam, do you have any approach that you have of coding efficiently?
That sounds pretty familiar to me too. I mean, it helps to kind of know exactly what you want to do. I mean, there's obviously a lot of resources. You don't have to be the lone gunman coder anymore,
Right.
Stack Overflow. I mean, some of the answers there might be a little old, but they can point you in the right direction. Reddit has some good threads. So figure out the problem that you want to solve. And then if you can't figure it out, ask.
Right. That's very good. Jeffrey?
I haven't coded in a long time, but when I did, I always had cheat sheets and checklists to make sure that I can go through the code and do things right.
And by the way, I think that this panel is incredibly efficient at cutting through your questions. So this is a great day to ask questions, and we're probably going to run short by the end. We'll just start the Ruthless reviews early if we run short. But if you have questions that are floating around, you can go ahead and ask them. We're probably going to have a couple extra minutes. Next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas is back, and he says Cisco predicts that video will account for 82% of all IP traffic by 2022. Does this seem realistic, and does that make video the next frontier?
Go ahead, Stuart.
No, I don't think it's realistic. I'm surprised that it's not already over that percentage, because with the changes for the last couple of years, with us all doing streaming a lot more, it really is starting to put a strain on the networks.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, well, if we keep pushing these extremes in resolution, because every time we bump up in resolution, it quadruples the bandwidth required, or you have to write much more efficient codecs to transmit the data. And if they keep pushing toward 8K and they want to stream it, kiss all of your bandwidth goodbye.
Go ahead, Bill.
With the proliferation of smart devices in people's pockets that allow them to consume video and create video and send it places, I'm kind of surprised it's only 82% now. I mean, it's just so pervasive, and it never was before. It used to be if you didn't have $10 million and could get an FCC license, you didn't create video. Boy, has that changed.
All right, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Video will compete with cloud gaming, although some cloud gaming will be partially video, so it kind of works hand in hand there. But I think that's cloud gaming is going to be a big thing as well.
And cloud gaming would contribute to video because it's passing video back over. So you're really in this situation where more cloud gaming, more video. Yeah, but it is again, we all often want to look at the effect of our lower brain, the thing that was developed over a million years, and what we're used to is learning by looking at things and watching things, and we had an in-between stage where we read a lot of text to do that. But we're kind of going more and more back into that. There's still places where text is really efficient to manage things and keep track of things. But we want to always remember that listening and looking at things was really how we communicated for a million years, and or at least the last couple 100,000. And so, it's a natural thing for us to continue to return back to our natural state, just supported by technology. Go ahead, John.
This is a self-fulfilling prophecy for Cisco. Cisco sells routers and switches. Of course they're going to say this because they want you to buy bigger switches and more routers.
But it's true, too. It turns out that the reality is close to what they need. Junaid? You're unmuted. There we go.
I think the other reason why they want that number up is, number one, there's about 4 billion people that are using smartphone devices. So by next year, that number is going to increase. And then the more and more people are streaming, especially with ATEM and all the different platforms that are coming on live, there's so many more new programmers coming. So yes, we might see that kind of traffic, but only from Cisco's standpoint. I don't know. I don't think they have access to like Juniper networks. There's so many more networks. So maybe their traffic that goes through their equipment is 82%.
Next question.
Moving on to Brent Kruger of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Since we seem light on questions, and I love that music question, what are panelists' favorite focus music songs or artists?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, I'll bite. I like musicians who write and perform their own music. So Dire Straits, Queen, Taylor Swift, Pink Floyd, Mumford & Sons, and Enya.
Go ahead, Ann.
Anything Hans Zimmer, hands down.
Go ahead, William. Can't hear you.
Anything Baroque. Baroque was based on patterns of respiration and heartbeat, so it follows through.
Good, Carl.
So pretty much just search for Artist Vangelis on Apple Music and then just go shuffle.
Go ahead, Todd. Can't hear you.
My old boss, Steve Reich, music for 18 musicians. And I also want to call back to Discord you mentioned, the Lo-Fi Girl Discord.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually really, really good music on that YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, this is going to sound really self-serving, but if you go to Apple Music and type Ken Jordan with 2 N's, then you'll see what's really good for focusing.
Very good. Go ahead, Brian.
I can't focus with music on. If I need to focus, I need to turn it off because I get sucked into it and I'm starting to break it apart and think about how it was made and engineered and all of that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Stuart mentioned Dire Straits. I'll put a link in Mukana. I watched a fascinating video about how the Sultans of Swing was written just last night. And when we were talking earlier about like, how do you learn more about music? Digging deep into those moments of inspiration from an artist standpoint is really powerful. You know, Dave Grohl did the I can't remember what the song was.
Everlong.
Yeah, a 13-minute video about a 3-minute song, and it's fascinating. So when you have those opportunities to kind of get inside the artist's head, take it.
No, go ahead, Bill.
I think the only music anyone ever needs is Weird Al Yankovic. I'm done. Thank you.
I have a tendency to when I just need to push everything out, I tend to listen to Mbira. So I mostly play Mbira music in the background. So I have a lot of friends that I spent more time in Zimbabwe than probably anywhere other than the United States. So it's kind of it just kind of sits in the background. There's a song that there's probably 20, 30 versions of it that I have all in one playlist. It's called Gathering Branches for a Temporary Shelter. I mean, there's a Zimbabwean name for it, but if you do it, I have like 20 versions of it and I just play it. it just slowly plays. It's all these different versions and different instruments and different things. And it just plays in the background. So that's usually what I have in the background. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just one small reminder. The volume knob does not adjust focus.
It does for me. Anyway, yeah. So next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Has there been discussion about bringing back the notes feature for trusted contributors? I've had a hard time fitting some questions into the small Mukana box, and notes can be helpful for links and the like, so you don't use too many characters.
It's exactly why we took the notes away. so just so you know, like it was the questions we kept, adding notes to correct something was what we put them in there for, not making longer questions. And so it just needs to be, the goal is to keep it short because it was just the questions were getting longer. And so the reason that we took notes away was specifically because they had being used for making longer questions. And it's really important from the show's perspective is the questions we just found that the box that we left is really what we need people to aim for their questions. So that's why the notes aren't there anymore. Next question.
Rupert McRae back from Dallas, Texas. What's the ideal number of questions for the average first hour office hours show?
Oh, by the way, Ant, I think might have dropped out and come back in. So it just depends on the speed at which we answer them. so it's what I like to see, what I'm trying to see before the show starts is 15 to 20 that's the goal I have is 15 to 20 for the first hour, is what I'm hoping to see. And I know that at that point it's going to be a very comfortable spin. There'll be more questions that come in during the show. I haven't really looked at the answer velocity for a little while, but typically we run between 20 and 35 answers an hour, which is very fast, actually. I mean, usually when we talk to clients about answering questions, we say 12 to 15, but over time we've gotten better at it. So if you look at it, the velocity of answers that we have now is 50 to 75% faster than a year ago. So because we but I've also, become more ruthless about it too. So I cut people off. It's a mixture of our panelists have gotten better at being succinct and answering the questions and getting to the point and not wandering off. And then I've also gotten rougher about just cutting people off, and the real quick is useful. So, and for those of listening, when I say real quick, that means 10 seconds. And literally, if I tell someone 10 seconds, you'll see me look at the clock, and they literally have 10 seconds. And if they go over 10 seconds very often, I start cutting. I just won't call them. So like that. It's really real quick means you have 10 seconds. Real quick is 5 seconds, like a couple words. So that usually means that I think that the question has been answered, and we just need to keep moving. So if you want to add something, you can, but it has to be really fast. So that's what that means. And so that's been pretty useful. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas is back with, could the KUPO, KUPO, quick release adapter be a good quarter 20 quick release solution? And he has a link there.
Yeah, I don't, if it's the one that I think it is, oh, no, it's not. Wow, that looks really cool. That is a quick release that slots straight in. It's a matter of weight and whether that weight would work. Go ahead, Courtney.
And I don't understand. Does it have a means of locking down, or would it just
it's that snap? I have that on the top of my triad tripod. My triad orbit has something like that where you pull it down and it releases and you let it back up. And the problem really is that the interface is very small, so it could shear, like if you put too much weight on it. But for a smaller device, that I will say with the triad orbit, it's super useful. We got those for Ozos. So putting Ozos on them was great. Go ahead, Stuart.
It looks to me like the picture is actually upside down, and the quarter 20 bit screws into the camera, and the bit where it says KUPO on the webpage would go into some sort of mount and like a click lock. It reminds me in shape of the locks that are used on the end of air hoses with compressors.
It's a little like that.
Which makes me wonder if you could make the camera go flying with the pressure. But,
yeah, exactly. Let's go to the next question. We're going to speed up because everyone jumped in and asked a bunch of questions. Go ahead, next
Fair
question.
enough. We're looking to ditch Google for analytics for our website. What are the alternatives for privacy-minded that won't break the bank? That comes from Nick Bat in the UK.
Okay, real quick, Carl and then Ken.
So Adobe Analytics, and the other one maybe Mixpanel, which is looks similar to Adobe, but you get to try before you buy.
Yep, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, there's analytics that's used on the Office Hours website. It's through Gravity Forms.
Great. Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana, says Zoom ISO is now going full release, and are you planning a second hour or a lab on workflows this now presents?
Oh, yeah. Zoom ISO is what Office Hours 2.0 is going to be based on. So it's going to be a mixture of Zoom ISO, Streamweaver, Mix Effect, and a variety of other things, all mashed up together, and Zoom OSC. So we'll talk a lot more about Zoom ISO. Next question.
Junaid Ahmed here in the panel from Herndon, Virginia says, how is it possible to stream 10 live streams on YouTube? I've been seeing this happen on a few YouTube channels playing upbeat music.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
A lot of different factors. If you have lower bit rate, lower audio rate, or if you have a big pipeline coming through and multiple computers, you can also use third-party things like Restream to mix and match as you go. So you can do a lot.
Restream or even just AWS Media Live would do all of that. And it's better to get it, if you're going to do exactly the same thing, it's better to put it all up and send it out from the cloud rather than trying to do it from a location. Go ahead, Junaid.
So what I've been seeing is the same channel. It's not multiple channels on YouTube. The same channel is running 10 streams.
10 streams at the same time of the same content. Here's all I'll say is that they're trying to manipulate the algorithm. And eventually, the problem with manipulating the algorithm is that YouTube will eventually see it, and then they'll just clamp down on it. And not only will they clamp down on it, but they will punitively whack your channel. So people think that they're going to get smarter than Google. We watch this all the time, and they'll figure out some way to manipulate it. But Google doesn't, because it doesn't share any of that stuff. It will penalize you for manipulating that's part of the little rules in there. And so it will not only ruin it for everybody, but it will also ruin it mostly for you. So you want to really, good content is the way to make that work. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik of Norway says, has anyone on the panel used Elgato Wave 1 or Wave 3 microphones? What do you think of the sound quality?
No one yet. So we'll have to wait and see when they show up. Next question.
Jim Beard, Detroit, Michigan's next. How many of you guys use your main camera behind a teleprompter screen to watch the Zoom screen so you're looking right at the viewer? And do you guys have a preferred way to do this?
Go ahead, Guy. It'll just be Guy. Go next question. Oh, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it looks just like this. So I can zoom in, and right behind Alex is the lens. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see the outline to the right over his shoulder. That's the lens right behind there. So when I zoom out, you can see I've got the gallery on the left and I've got the questions on the right. And that's my teleprompter.
Next question.
Jim Suttle of Glasgow, Scotland says, for how long can YouTube or Facebook continue to keep live stream video available on their sites given the demand on storage?
They have all the storage. Like, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they just keep on adding more to it. That's part of the. It is an amazing service when you actually think about high resolution video being streamed for free. We have to remember that that's quite a thing. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I got an email that said that YouTube was actually going to privatize a lot of my unlisted videos from a channel that I haven't used much. So that's kind of a precursor. I'm guessing that the next step is to actually purge some of this older stuff.
Maybe. I
we'll
just
see
think
what
that,
happens.
I think that has more to do with security than anything else. Just if you left it on, I think that's a security feature, not necessarily a storage feature. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back with when I asked about MA3 programming, I was referring to lighting programming, not coding. Coming from audio, would the MA courses be best or a generic lighting programming resource? I'm already using the on-PC software.
I don't know if we have a lot of lighting people in here today. Talak is our lighting expert. So when he's here, you have to keep your eye out for him. When he's here, ask that question again. He might have a better answer. Next question.
Vienna from Australia has the last question in the regular group. I'm running an online conference later this year. The organizers of the conference, many of whom are Zoom challenged, would like their logo superimposed over the Zoom video. What's the easiest way to do this without using a virtual background?
Go ahead, Ken.
I'd say with an ATEM and iPad, you can do stuff like this. So that's where
the hard
logo
part
could come on.
Is that they won't have the money to do that across lots of people. Jeffrey?
Pre-record. Simply, if they don't know how to use Zoom that well, pre-record their video. That way you're not going to have problems during the conference.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about that is that pre-record's good if you're going to dump so I do think that all presentations should be just dumped to video. So I will agree with that process. But I think that what we really should be doing is what we're doing, in my opinion, what we're doing here, which is discussion during conferences. Oh my goodness, we might actually talk about something. Go ahead, Todd.
Any of the Ecamm Live OBS solutions are awesome. Instant lower thirds, instant logos, on and off.
Yeah, Ecamm Live on the is Ecamm Live cross-platform? Or is it just Mac only?
It's Mac only. OBS is cross-platform.
And I would use that competition. And then there's that combination of Ecamm Live on the Mac, and OBS is very stable on the PC, not very stable on the Mac. And then Mimo Live is great, but it's probably a little bit more complicated, a little more expensive than what you want to put in everybody's house. So these other ones are a little less expensive. Go ahead, Courtney. No. Okay. Do we have?
Sorry, I have to leave. That was.
Oh,
I was not.
Bye-bye.
I was just waving goodbye.
Bye. All right. Now we are ready for the Ruthless reviews, the video Ruthless reviews. So everyone will get ready. If anyone, Courtney, now I see why Courtney left. He didn't want to play. Sorry. Courtney looks fine, but anyway, he already knows where he's at. All right, I'm pulling up another window here so I can take a look at it. All right. Wow, Todd, you look really sharp. Anyway, so Todd happens to be the one that's seen there. All right, so let's go ahead and jump. Chris is our first victim. So let's take a look at Chris here.
Me?
Yeah, I just wish you wouldn't have your mic in the shot, because I would never do anything like that. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No.
Can't hear anything.
Yeah. So
I have an earpiece. I'm just going to say, I have an earpiece.
You just won't use it.
I find it uncomfortable. Here's the problem. Especially in the morning, I'm getting up and leaving a lot. I know you don't want us to do that, but I take my wife to work, and it's awkward. That being said, what I want to do is get I think I've settled on the Rode GoPro LMNO thing, whatever that thing is called. Yeah. and some, not true in-ears, but something like that. And I also, I have a hard time focusing when it's in one ear. So I do want to put it in both ears. So some sort of Shure, cram it in your ears, maybe like what Ken has or something like that. But I want to be able to stand up and walk quickly.
Yep.
And that's why I went to headphones.
Chris, you might want to look at the Apple EarPods Pro. They've dropped to $170.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to listen to the output of the
Mix
Pre. Yeah. Because I do a lot of routing inside the Mix Pre to be able to decide whether or not I want to send an application out to Zoom or just to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that I'm probably going to use one of my Rodes for that exact thing. I just haven't.
And it'll do that?
Yeah, it should. Yeah. I mean, I used it. I've already used the Rode Pro as an IFB for when we did cooking tests.
Okay.
So I just had one Rode go to the computer and one back to me. So I had two of them, and I had them swapped so that they would. It's an expensive way to do it, but it works really well.
I mean, I just want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I think that it worked fine for me.
And so it'll then, with the appropriate cable, headphone out of the Mix Pre into that thing. It'll sit there and need batteries and die on me all the time and be a pain.
You just have to figure out how you're going to charge it between. You just got to have a plug somewhere that you just plug it in after the show, and then.
Oh, like the show is the only time I'm on Zoom.
Well, you can use whatever you want when you're not on the show. This is Ruthless Reviews for here. It's the main thing is that it looks. Again, we just try to. I'm just always trying. It looks better.
I get that. Can I see a show of hands? Sorry to digress here. I'm taking over. Alex, you can leave. Can I get a show of hands of how many people in the last X months has had somebody in a meeting, not office hours, in a meeting say, "Wow, your picture and you sound really good." Like
every day, like literally almost every meeting. Like not every meeting, almost every day. Meeting. If it's a new person, you get the impact. Again, when we're doing this kind of Ruthless review, we want to remember that it does make a difference when you're in meetings, when you're pitching something, when you're talking about ideas or whatever. You're heard more clearly, and I mean you're given more weight, and it's not fair, like it's not, whatever. But when you clean up all of these things, you are subconsciously given more weight in every meeting that you're in, and so you just want to remember that this isn't just like how to do it for office hours. It just happens to be how to make it, and it also makes it easier for people to listen to you, and and you're competing with people who oftentimes sound like they're on a speakerphone in a really echoey room, and who do people want to listen to talk, in a meeting like that? That's the thing you always want to kind of remember. In addition to that, I do think that we have the opportunity as we go into the fall. We're really working on the Zoom ISO and the production. We're going to build a show around the quality that the panelists have pushed this to. So that there is the panelists have pushed this quality really high. And now we're going to build graphics and editing and everything else around it to create a show that I don't think anybody has seen before. Because everyone, when they bring in remotes, I mean, right now, I will argue that most of the panelists here look better than most insert studios for, like, if you watch a Sunday morning, news thing, the insert studios, the professional insert studios that they use are not as good as what most of our panelists look like. And so I think that's and so if we add graphics and editing and everything else on top of that, it gets pretty interesting. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, like 30 plus years ago, I almost invested in building an insert studio in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
glad I did.
Be worth it. In my screen, I'm next, so you guys have to give me input on my setup. Oh, and Chris, one last thing. Yours is a little dark, just a touch dark.
Alex, I think you've settled on one of the best looks I've seen for you. I thought originally that your background was brighter than I would have suggested, but you've dialed it back a little bit. You really pop out of your screen beautifully. So I think you're getting close to the ideal here.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I think because you use the telestrator so often and effectively, that the fact that it's a very neutral background with just a little bit of highlight behind you works really well.
Go ahead, Ian.
I used to think you were a little too warm, but it looks like you've dialed it in now to look more natural.
Yeah, absolutely. I have pulled it back a fair bit. Go ahead, Ken.
Annoyingly, there was a little black thing right at the top of your screen, but you've removed it today, and I had a screenshot of it to show you, but you fixed it.
I fixed it yesterday. I pulled it up. I pulled it up before, or maybe I fixed it before Mac break. I pulled it up so that Leo wouldn't give me a hard time about it. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so the color correction that you've done on the camera looks a lot better than what it used to be. So it used to be a little bit orange as far as skin tone. I think the blue behind you, that royal blue, works a lot better than the blue to green you used to have. I think that blue works a bit better.
Yeah, the funny thing is I'd go to green when I was wearing a blue shirt, and then I decided I'm just not going to wear blue shirts anymore. So that I just fixed it by just saying I'm not going to do that anymore, and because I felt weird to have a blue background and a blue shirt for me. For some reason, I didn't like it. I did pull that back, and the LUT that I'm using now is the Charles LUT, which I'm still tweaking a little bit. I'm playing with because I'm playing with a couple of things. I have a polarizing filter on the camera, and then I have a polarizing filter on the lights to keep the reflections down. The funny thing about that is that the two polarizations actually bring out imperfections in my skin more than regular. So I'm not totally sold on whether it makes sense or not, because it's pulling those tones out. Go ahead, Jesse.
So my wife at one point, who peered in, was wondering why you don't have a more interesting background, and then I explained to her that more of the detail can go into you, as you've explained the way the compression works, and then she actually totally got it, and she's like, that makes sense.
Yeah, when you think about your background, you want to think about it being the more detail you have in the background. And if I may have something like I'm looking at Carl's, which we'll go to next, is I may end up with more detail in the background, but it's going to be kind of a shelving like that. But I have I'm going to put back media things that would be cool, that will make you think about what they are. Like I have one of the F950s from Star Wars, and I've got but on the other end of that, I have a Zonophone that a friend of mine lent me. So I have a Zonophone that's going to be like next to it, so like two different ranges of things. And so I do think that there's a value in having a set in the background. The biggest reason is so that I can have a desk and work at it and show things and everything else. But when you think about compression, it definitely looks better if you don't have anything back there. So because it lets all the pixels, all the compression can spend all of its pixels on the foreground. Okay, Taylor, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Alex, aren't you gathering stuff and building a set at the office?
I gave up.
Oh, you gave up on it?
Yeah, so I'm not going to build in the office. It's just getting up at being down at the office at 5. It was just like, like I started going down that path, and I will eventually build something at the office, but it's it's just right now it's just a lot of resources to try to build up 2 of these, because I needed to have parity, and the one I have in my house is pretty robust. So go ahead. Let's look at Carl. Take a look at Carl here. I'm looking at Chris now.
I think Carl and Junaid are the benchmark in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love the soft busyness.
Yeah, Carl's definitely the inspiration for me going, I got to put a bookcase back there or something like that. I keep on looking at it going, how that really works. It's just nice. It is. I still feel like the vignette might be just a little heavy.
Tried to make, so essentially what it is, it's evenly lit, but I kind of think I know what's going on. So the light that's lighting me, it's hitting the bookcase, but because all the surfaces of the bookcase are 90 degrees or, perpendicular to the camera, the stuff that's directly on axis to the camera reflects more. And unfortunately, all my darker books, the books that have a darker spine, are on the far left and the far right. So they kind of, but if you look at the actual white of the shelves, that's kind of
right. It just feels like it. It feels like it on both sides. On both sides, it feels like there's a little vignetting there. But
the books that are directly behind my head are reflecting the light. So they're actually not that white. They're actually just reflecting the light. So there is a bit of reflectance from the light that's in front of me, the broad light that's in front of me. So I can add 2 extra lights at the back. So which would, I can actually light them up like lighting a green screen. So it's very even. But that'll take more time to set up and pack down every day.
Right.
All new books.
No, it looks great. Stuart?
Carl, you've mentioned using, I think it was a Canon full frame camera. Which lens have you got on it, and how big is the image circle on the lens?
So it's a nifty 50. So it's full frame, nifty 50 going into full frame. I think it's like 1.1 crop, you know how it works on full frame DSLRs. So, but yeah, it's a nifty 50 at full 1.8. It's okay because it essentially has me in focus. I understand with nifty 50 you'd get a bit soft on the edges if we're at full, but that's okay because I'm in the center anyway, so that's okay. So my shoulders make it out of focus.
That is a hugely underrated lens for beginner filmmakers.
The STM version, which is the one I have, which is the current version, is extremely sharp. So it's one of the best value, lenses you can get.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I like the black microphone. I think the speculars that come off it just are a nice element. I think sometimes the silver microphones, there's a little bit too much reflection, but that looks good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next. Oh, go ahead. No, okay. Yeah. Next is Paul Wallace. Let's take a look at Paul here.
Okay, well, I'm working on it. This isn't my final setup. I've got, we're looking at getting some kind of curtain or backdrop. Mm-hmm. I'm in my condo now. I've got 2 locations. My main location is out in Cedar Creek outside of Austin, where I have a big house with lots of options. Here at the condo, I've just got a 8-foot by 14-foot by 9-foot tall space. And so the big issue is lighting, backdrop. And as you can see, I'm not there right now, but I'm looking at different options.
And you can go with, as far as backdrop, you can either go with, there's a lot of cool things back there. I think if you shorten the depth of field, if you put a camera in there that shortened the depth of field, you wouldn't have to do as much with the background. I mean, you can just blur it out. I mean, that's really the easiest way to kind of have whatever you have back there. Kind of there, you're obviously getting overexposed on one side towards the window. So diffusing that or having some more control over that, having some more control over that so you're not blowing out on one side would probably fix some of those things, or a little bit of fill or a little bit of both. But then again, a shorter depth of field camera will, pop most of that stuff out and not have it be quite as much detail. With the mic, what I would say is that it either needs to be out or a little more in. So when people see it as a mic, and I tend to lean towards the underslung mic as opposed to coming in from above, just because I think that it doesn't really get in front of your head. Something like, I think that's a better look in my opinion. It kind of goes into the front than having it, because when it comes in from above, I feel like it looks like a mistake. Like it just looks like something's hanging down there in the way there. So I think that's what I would kind of look at there. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm probably going to start using the ZV-1 Sony more. And I just watched a really good YouTube video on how you can really buff up that camera with some options. They're using a plate underneath it, which allows you to get to the battery compartment, and then a better a desk type tripod and so on.
Now, do you have
that's what I'm moving toward.
Do you have an ATEM Mini?
I do. I have an ATEM Mini right here. Yeah.
Right. Because once you go down that path, it's a lot easier to use the ATEM, the Blackmagic cameras become just a lot more fun. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, my question for Paul, or my comment for Paul, which now is irrelevant, was about headroom, because he's moving around a little bit. But in that framing you had before, headroom is a funny thing because it really changes depending on how much of your head fills the frame. You had the top of your head cut off, which is not a bad thing if you're in a pretty intimate, tight shot, because you want to focus on the eyes. But in the earlier shot, in your earlier framing, you had just enough of your head cut off so it seemed uncomfortable, and you were small in the frame, which makes it feel to me very unbalanced. People have said a lot that the eyes on the upper third line, if you divide your screen horizontally into thirds and put their eyes right on the upper third line, then that will change how much headroom you leave someone depending on the intimacy of the shot. But that tends to look balanced.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
That is exactly what I was going to talk about, is the headroom and the eyes on the third. Bill nailed it.
I think the talent looks great between the haircut and the dark shirt, which offsets the white background. And it's like a little iCloud icon you have down there. I love it.
Go ahead, Junaid.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm going to get some kind of backdrop, and then I'll have a lot more options if I have a curtain or a backdrop to work with.
Go ahead,
I
Jane.
agree. The having the center, being in the center and the outline being in the top line, that's an excellent point. The other thing that I would do is raise the camera up a little bit higher, because right now it's still looking up and not directly at your eyes. The point about the light coming from the window, what you can also do is add. So in films and whatnot, and TV shows, they'll apply some kind of a film, just like you do on your cars, film that will also cut down the light. So in Schitt's Creek, when they're in the store, you can see when they open the door, you see a light coming in, but as soon as they close it, it's balanced out. So that's something that you can do immediately.
I raised it up about 3 or 4 inches. Is that better?
Definitely looks better. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, and Paul, when let me expand this out a little bit. You can see here in the waveform, this is just the vector or the waveform showing how it's just pushing all the way past. And when you're not optimized in the exposure, you really, even on a not so great camera, you're just making a poor image. So if you can just take control of the light and try to bring that down, I know that some of these webcams you can't really do too much with the exposure, but you can really see here in the RGB parade and in the waveform what's going on. You're way. This is that wall behind you, just overexposed. So, and then on the RGB parade you can see it as well. So, yeah, if you can control your exposure, you get a much more pleasing image, because you're either hurting the highlights or you're hurting the shadows or everything in between. So you just want to be mindful of exposure.
And we can bring Mr. Edelson in if he's out there. So we can bring him in for that as well. Next question, our next victim is William. Let's take a look at William here. Let's see thoughts here. One thing that I would do is if I hang a cloth, behind me, I'd iron it or steam it, so that I would.
I ironed it at home, brought it in,
and then it was back to what
and
it
then
was.
I realized I had to bring the ironing board and iron in here.
Yep. Yeah, the steamer is really good. You don't have to bring the ironing board in. So I would use a steamer as opposed to an ironing board, because really large spaces like that are really difficult. The difference between there's not a lot of cost between the $15 steamers and the $35 steamers, and the $35 steamers do a way better job. It's a lot less time. So I would recommend. I think that's something that would probably make things a little easier to clean it up. Go ahead, Stuart.
William, one thing that will also keep all those ripples away is a little bit of weight on the bottom corners of the cloth as well, just to keep it so it's hanging tight.
Yeah,
not a lot of weight, just a little.
Sometimes, like on the hard creases where you have it, you may have to iron those. But then the final touch up for it, you may have to use an ironing board to iron out some of the hard creases. But final touch up can be done with a steamer. Go ahead, Bill.
The other thing that I learned in early cinematography is that anybody's eyes are drawn to the brightest thing in a screen. When you're in a white T-shirt, you have a large white mass below you, and it tends to draw people's eyes away from your face to that. So that's one of the reasons I standardized early on just a whole bunch of black T-shirts. And I tend to do this because it makes my face pop out a little more, and people aren't worried about what's below that. So I tend to go darker rather than brighter. I know some people go neutral, and that's fine, but it's just a thought that white T-shirts tend to blow out and draw the eye down.
Go ahead, Ross.
I have an even more passes bit of white below this. So.
Yeah, I'd give yourself just a touch more headroom. Just you get you're right up there on the top, and I'd give yourself just a little bit of space there. Just a little.
I would get a few more clamps for that backdrop too, just to keep it taut.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Mouse button dying. Just one request from the chat, which I'll follow up as well. Jesse, can you spotlight the person that's been talked about? Because the panelists can see it, but the audience can't.
We've lost Jesse. Our editor's gone. So, Jesse, we just want to make sure we're spotlighting folks that we're talking about there. So, for when the other thing I would think about with that arm is I would swing that arm a little lower and pull the mic up so that there's not quite as much stuff. So I would swing the mic up so that if you look at I'm not using the Heil, but my mic is coming out, but not all the pieces of it. So having it up, kind of pulling the mic, swinging it up in that last knuckle, but pulling the arm down. just to put it under
I
the
have
frame.
to move the mount of the mic closer to me because it's at its extreme extension right now.
Right.
So if I do that, I'll only be pointing at my navel.
No, no, absolutely. So anyway, that would be something that I would do. Again, we would like to over time lean away from over the ear. If you can find a in ear solution.
Oh, it's on order.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
This is what I had when we started.
No, absolutely. And I think I was looking at something else, so maybe it was mentioned, but I almost will never wear white in front of a camera. So like just any kind of white, I try to avoid because it generally throws off the exposure. If it's doing auto exposure, it's hard to manage skin tones with white. So usually I'm on some kind of off white or usually some kind of neutral, coolish color. You'll find that not always, but 99% of the time I'll have something that's either desaturated or in some kind of cool color, just because it makes the face look better. And then your lighting is a little overhead, like you're just a little bit of shadow in the middle of your face that I think would improve by having some larger sources out here. So just something else to think about there. Let's go ahead and jump to Ken. Let's take a look at Ken here. And Jesse, you can, there we go.
With Ken, now you're just making us look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just move on because none of us can match.
No, it looks good. Ken, I might frame out just a little wider than what you have here. Like it's a little close, for and I notice it more when I look at it on YouTube later. Sometimes I just feel like I do that as well. So I've been trying to pull back a little bit, but just a little bit less as far as image quality and everything else. It looks amazing. Image quality, lighting looks, it's definitely an amazing setup. So yeah, go ahead, Carl.
As far as the hair light, I can see you have a hair light. It is actually working really well on your hair. If you could bring your hair light as low as you can so it's out of shot, if that makes sense. And you can put it to one side if you choose, but you've got like the perfect type of hair to use a hair. Like I've got none, so I can't use it. But yeah, so your hair works really well with the hair light. So I think that just bringing the hair light down as low as you can before it gets in a shot, of course.
That's great. Bill, let's go. Oh, go ahead, Roscoe.
No, it's okay. I was being super picky. I was going to say that pop filter is a perfect oval, and somehow it grabs my attention. And if you lowered it, if you just whatever, it's going to be a perfect oval. If you dropped it just a little closer to the mic, it would be interrupted. That's getting super picky.
Go ahead. Now we're going to jump to Bill. Let's look at Bill here.
Oh, we got a 2-up. That's neat.
I don't know what we have. I am pinning all kinds of stuff here, so I got to figure out what's going on. There we go. So one thing is, Bill, that you're using a 6K, right?
Yeah, I am using a 6K, but there's all sorts of weirdness going on with it.
Okay, because it just looks really blocky, like over compressed, and I'm not sure what it's not as clean as some of the other 6K.
What's the signal path to get it into the computer?
It's going from the Blackmagic 6K directly into an ATEM Mini, and that's being fed by USB-C directly into the MacBook 16-inch MacBook Pro.
It almost looks like it's going through a VHS machine.
Ooh.
Yeah, it looks much more. It just doesn't look like you're getting the detail that you would expect. Now, I believe that it's probably your background. So, given that you're going through all the same things, I think this is showing us the problem with a complex background is that it's using up I'd be really interested to see what would happen, whether you would look different in a more neutral background. I think that these backgrounds actually make it harder for it's this specific type of background, even more than someone's room or something else. I've been noticing this in setups that we're doing when we're doing tech checks, is that the modeled kind of color background seems to be really hard for Zoom to compress. And it's something that it took me a little while to kind of fish into that, but we've been seeing that when people use these specific backgrounds, that we're seeing less detail on the whole picture, and we think that it's spreading the spatial compression out. Go ahead, Stuart. Yeah.
Okay, it's official. I need to replace the battery in the mouse. There's a couple of questions in the chat asking what Bill's frame rate is and what lens he's using as well, because that might have
It's a really good
effect.
lens. It's this Canon 1635 L glass lens on a Blackmagic 6K, so there's no reason it would be creating
And what's
any
the frame rate?
artifacts. Should be at 30. I don't know that that's true, but I will go back and take a look at the settings.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing here is make sure you're set to 30p in the ATEM, make sure your camera is set to 30p, and make sure you're running 180 degree shutter. 360 degree shutter has some weird artifacts when it comes to zoom, I'm noticing now, because I'm seeing people use it because they've got lower light, so they'll use it to increase their light, but it gets some weird artifacts running a 360 degree shutter in zoom.
Go ahead, Chris.
Bill, can you easily turn off the blue highlight behind you?
Sure.
Because I'm wondering if the addition of the feathering of the light changes. No, it's the modeled background is still very blocky.
Do you have much gain on your camera?
Probably, yeah, I think so. Let me bring up the
Blackmagic.
Blackmagic.
That's it.
Yeah, maybe
Sorry,
just your
that took
lighting
me.
needs to be a lot brighter and then gain down.
Your gain destroys compression.
Okay.
It's native 400, isn't it?
We could use a little more light.
But the compression artifacts are gone.
Yeah,
like it's like super clean.
Macro
Silky,
block.
black
super
silk.
clean.
One
Wow.
single macro block.
Yeah, go ahead.
Raise your
hang on a
pedestal,
second.
please. Raise your pedestal.
Yeah, go ahead,
When
Jesse.
I do that, I have to restore the settings from the Blackmagic saved April preset, or you will not get a signal out.
It's a common problem with the Blackmagic having that muddled look, at least when you're not a sophisticated user such as myself. Because when I first fired it up, Mr. Fenwick told me I looked like I was modeled out of clay.
So what it was immediately better but darker. So it's the gain. It's so when you gain up, and the problem with you look much sharper at lower gain, and because the little changes basically defeat the spatial compression, and then what it does, its response is to beat up your image. So I've been trying to figure that out for a little while, and now I understand.
So that means I have to add more light to my face.
Yeah. That's probably and it's probably a combination of that background with the gain, but you want to be at 0, maybe maybe +2 if you're looking at the ATEM. That's kind of as high as you want to go on it to get the best compression, on the other side.
All right, I'll futz with that overnight, and then tomorrow I will come back with less gain, more light.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
And see if I get a suntan during the course of the show.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's jump to Todd. Let's see, pin.
I'm excited.
Looks great. I really like the background. I like the this is another one where I like the background. It feels a little weighted to one side, where you have the panels. So there's like a little bit of a weight on that side that I would want to, if there was just something in that white area on the other side that didn't look like, not symmetrical, but just something that just had a little bit more detail there, I think I'd be happy with it. Normally I would say, it's not good to have a light in there, but I kind of like the bright light, and I kind of, and I think that now with the wider shot, I feel it still feels like the panels have a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. With the wider shot, I do think if you tilt it down a little bit, I feel like the wider shot I think looks better. But I think that it is, now you have too much headroom. But if you corrected for that, I think it would be. We once told someone to do that like 2 minutes before a show, and the whole rig fell apart. We just went live with it sideways. I'm always afraid of telling people to move their camera. Go ahead, Chris.
I would remove, again, this is super picky. Remove the table, and what is the round thing to my left of the end table behind you, over your left shoulder?
That is a djembe that I put there to try to mask the outlet, and I did that just before we got started with these. But
I would love to see a cello back there on a stand.
I would too. You know how much those cost, Chris?
I don't, but let's get. Maybe we could get somebody to model you on an AR.
I will be. just complete transparency here. Just before we started, I put a viola on a stand back there, and it didn't cover the outlet because that's what you use violas for, is to cover outlets. And
Really expensive
but
ones,
it didn't. So I just grabbed the djembe to try to put there, and it didn't succeed either. And you got my can of air back there too. It's kind of a mess. But I understand the balance principle, Alex. I gotta figure that one out.
But I love the look. I think I like the warm look. I like that you pop out. You're not quite as warm as the background, and I actually like that it kind of pops out a little bit. But overall, I like the art, and it's a nice look. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah. Since Mr. Fenwick has opened the door of being picky, and I welcome you to be as picky with me.
No, I like it.
I would lose the air can because it doesn't match the sort of period of all the other stuff on that desk. It looks too modern compared to this lovely.
Now, if you can get like a
and microphone the globe over your
a Baroque
right
air
shoulder.
Air can.
Yeah, exactly.
Steampunk, yeah. So the globe over your right shoulder is flared beyond the dynamic range of the camera. So a little gel, but only facing the camera on that
I'm
light.
sorry.
So you still get the light across the back, but just dim the front of it.
Which one? Which one was that? This one here?
The bright one over your right shoulder. Yeah, that one you're pointing to now.
Yeah, if you lower the light of that one, you won't be able to see the background though, because that's lighting up the background.
Yeah, so that's why just gel the front of the light, but not the back of the light.
I wouldn't.
Or even paint the front of the light.
I think I'm fine. For some reason, I'm fine with it blowing out. And I guess as someone who works at HDR, I look at that going, if he sends me a 10-bit image of that, it'll look amazing. like it's just like having little lights in there. I was like, oh, that would look pretty.
It's okay for practicals to clip. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta say, since the last Ruthless review, the one thing I did was go out and buy one of those miniature Pavo lights. So that's why I stand out a little bit better was because of y'all's last review. So thank you for that.
That's great. Ann?
I'm getting a green tint on his right side. Is anybody else seeing that?
And I don't know I don't know if that's from the outside, from the natural light.
It looks like a light source because I also see it on your microphone.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Just a touch.
Yeah. I've been noticing this being a little bit green, and actually outside of Zoom in my multi-view, it's also green. And I actually don't know how to approach this and how to get rid of it. Camera's on auto white balance, so maybe I should work on that a little bit.
Get yourself a large card. Black would be preferably foam core, something like that, and start blocking the different light sources until you figure out where it's coming from.
Right.
And then
it could be interaction between those light sources as well.
Thanks, Roscoe. Okay, cool.
Yeah, go ahead, William.
No. Check with local high schools. They are buying instruments at this time and replacing.
We're still working on that cello.
So some kid may have totally abused a cello.
But then people ask him to play it. Then he has to play the cello, and then it's not going to be at the same level as his
I didn't
fiddle.
say double bass. Okay.
Yeah. So Todd, can we get a 4x4 double bass?
I'm still stuck with the steampunk air. I don't know how someone hasn't made one of those.
The steampunk air can.
I think that would be. I think that would. If you had it back there and it was clearly an air spray that was steampunk, it would like I wouldn't be able to stop looking at it. It would just be like, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Not only that, Alex, but what about a steampunk mic stand?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you can already get mics that look steampunk.
Blair Anderson can make all of our steampunk stuff. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because I do think that if you could match your foreground to the background as far as the gear, it would be maybe a little over the top. But that's what we do. That's what we do.
It would be kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Jesse's next. Great work, Todd. Looks amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Let's take a look at Jesse here. And I think we need to, Jesse, you need to spotlight yourself. And let's see here. Is he spotlight for everybody else? I don't know what other people can see. So I just don't, there we go. All right. So the whole overall, it looks a little cool. Like the overall image looks a little cool compared to, now what camera are you using?
I have a Sony RX100, which, as Charles was telling me, does favor all the Sonys a cool cast.
Right.
which I like. It kind of takes some of the redness out of my face, either when I blush or when I sunburn.
Right. And then probably a little, I would say both a little too close or a little not quite enough headroom, so I would have a little less headroom. Yeah, that's good. But I would have a little less headroom, so I'd tilt that camera down just a little bit or move yourself up a little bit. But but it feels, again, like Ken, and me some of the time when I'm not careful, a little close, to, as far as compared to everyone else. So go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, Sony Blue is a common thing, but from what I'm seeing right now, you need a tripod or a stand, something, because there's this little wiggle every time you move the desk or the camera, and it just sort of rocks for a little bit longer. So it's just distracting because everything else looks so nice.
Yeah, separating the stand
right.
from the table.
Right. I don't have that ability if you saw the corner where everything is coming out of, but what I do have is a Manfrotto.
I don't want you to sell yourself short. You always have the ability. You're just not willing to drill into the wall.
Exactly.
And so you have the ability. You're just not willing to use that ability. We just want to make sure.
That's true. That's fair enough. But what I do have is the ability to go to my garage and pull out the Manfrotto arm that I bought for the Blackmagic, which is way more stable than what it's on right now. Is Amazon's special twist arm that's better for lights than it is a camera. Usually I get away with it because the Sony has built-in image stabilization. So I've always noticed how my camera is fluttering, but my image is rock steady unless I do something, major, like bump the desk like this. But
we see a little of it a lot. So it's definitely it's not buying you all the pixels. It's just it's most of the pixels. Go ahead.
What do you guys
Stuart.
think of the new props I've added in here?
I like the props. I would move the
I love the bus.
I would move the bus more towards the corner, more towards along the thing a little bit, just because it's too, for some reason it's too symmetrical.
I don't want to throw my 3-year-old under the bus, but I will. Literally. I get it into perfect position, and then she plays with it.
Oh yeah. There we go. Go ahead, Ant.
Would you be able to get a brighter key light on you? I think that would also help to offset the blue cast that you got going from the color temperature.
You're competing a little bit with the LED behind you on the TV. It's a little brighter than you are. So, some either bringing that down or bringing up a larger and closer key light would probably be would improve the situation. There's a lot of light.
I actually do.
That's actually not bad.
I mean, that would be too much.
Yeah, that was too much there.
So I've got a key light, and then behind my monitor, I've got this other, it's a arm-mounted LED light that's kind of like a fill light that I usually just bounce up the wall, but I can adjust the brightness on it.
Oh.
So I could probably get more light by increasing the brightness.
Yeah, if you're bouncing off the wall, just increase the brightness because it'll be a little softer too.
Yeah.
You can examine his lighting grid in the reflection on his TV.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that I would probably think about. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I think you said RX100 is in autofocus at the moment, because I notice when he sits still, it seems that the focus at the moment, or maybe it's just for today, is more even with the ears than it is with the reflection on the eyes. So
it's manual.
It's like it's a little
it's
tiny little bit long.
That's just.
Oh, okay.
Some mornings I'll nail it a little better than others. So, you know what the biggest problem is? It affects my audio too, is I move around like a rabid squirrel all day, and I never can get the relationships constant.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I was just saying that I actually do like the lampshade reflection in the TV in the background, because rather than it being just a flat black panel,
like having something back there.
Yes, but the I know that pole, there is a light on top of it, but that just doesn't work for me. I like like the table and things on the table, but the pole that's just up there, because you can't see what's on it, you're just seeing the pole. It doesn't
kind of like to see I'd kind of
my
like to see an
hairlight.
image on that monitor. Maybe something like this.
You know what? Actually,
Go ahead.
There's some really cool things I could do with the monitor that I haven't because I thought it might be distracting. But it's a LG 4K OLED that's got some really beautiful screensaver type images. And when I
that'd
first,
be distracting.
Yeah, but there's some that look they sort of match the palm tree where it's a jungle scene with water flowing down.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it's going to be too distracting.
It's big enough in the frame. I probably wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carl. Last word, and then we'll move on.
All right, so quickly on image stabilization, if you have it fixed, if a camera is fixed and you have image stabilization, it can get confused. It can actually start moving itself. Plus, image stabilization works as more of a pivot than an up-down. So generally, you're going to have up-down if you've got it fixed on a platform like a tripod or an arm. So that won't work. Even if you have IBIS, it won't work. It's designed for human up-down as far as rotation around the film plane rather than moving up-down the film plane.
All right, now we're going to move on to Junaid. Let's go to Junaid here. If you could spotlight Junaid here. In the typical sense, we're going to run out of time if we're not careful. But I don't think we have much to say for Junaid. Are we spotlighting Junaid there? There we go. It looks good. It looks really good. The thing is, it matches. Normally, I would say don't use warm lights behind you, but it actually works really well for you. I mean, I like the little blue on one side that just like the little highlights. I don't know what that is, but it's just kind of a nice little thing that pops out. So yeah, normally I'm kind of against warm colors behind people, but it's working. Like it totally works for you. Go ahead, Todd.
Junaid, you're beautiful.
Thank you.
The red against the gray and the black of the hair. It's such a beautiful image for me.
Thank you.
I would probably run my headphones. If you have an extension, I'd run them behind you as opposed to in front of you. But otherwise, it's a great frame. Yeah.
I'd love to see it with a blue highlight instead of the red, just to A/B it. Look at that. He's got buttons.
He's going to click
Either
click
that
on
or
us.
keep the red highlight and change to a blue shirt.
Well, usually I wear black shirts, or darker shirt, or I'll put a jacket on top of a t-shirt, so to kind of like cut that out. But then my remote is dead because my kid's been playing with it all day.
No worries. Go ahead, Ant.
I was going to just say change the shirt because of the red background, but you've already covered that. And then I was just going to say next because this is beautiful.
Yeah, it's really good. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, as you're new, I'd just like to know what your camera setup is because
Absolutely.
we're not aware.
So I've got an EOS R with an RF to EF adapter with a 40mm pancake f2.8 lens, and it's sitting about in the teleprompter. Actually, I can show you that setup looks like. So it's back there, the thing, and I got another secondary camera here, which is also an EOS R with a 2040-105 lens on a slider, and then the rear one is also on the slider, so I can move it around, running.
Oh,
on
stop
arc.
it!
Now he's showing
next.
So embarrassed.
We've been outdone. I just want to say like that. There, the bar has been once again just slid up a little bit on all of us. So
and
really,
my
really
wallet
well done.
just screamed too.
That's great. Wow, that's awesome. So
Appreciate it.
we'll expect that from everybody in a month. It's just one of those things.
What was it?
No, it's great. Yeah, it looks great.
I can't get my ironing done.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Brian. Let's go to Brian. Spotlight Brian here. Let's see here. It looks good. So I love the electronics behind you. The screen right behind you with a reflection is not as exciting. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
And normally has something on it, and the laptop that drives that screen just died. The battery won't charge for some reason. So normally I have something there, faders, or because not a black hole.
I mean, usually that's another thing that I'm kind of usually against monitors in the set. I know that that's a very popular thing to do, and I did it myself for a decade until I decided that it was not, a large monitor in a set almost anywhere is, to me, a kind of a distraction from the person that's there. But I think if you have sliders back there that tie it in, although I would rather see the rack of electronics than sliders. So did the mic take a hit, or is it just a weird angle? It feels like the microphone has like an angle to it. Maybe it's just the angle. No, just the top looked like it was bent down. So
that's what it looks like.
Okay. No, I was just curious. I think that some kind of accent light on, not where the electronics are, but on the other side, just filling that in with something that just an up light or down light, or just something that just added a little bit of color maybe, or a little bit of contrast there. But otherwise, I think it looks great. Again, headphones. I mean, if you're willing to go in ear, it'll look better. Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
What's the bright splotch in the bottom right of our image? It looks like there's a power board peeking out behind a curtain.
Right
it's
here?
just distracting because it's this one bright splotch in the background.
Kind of lower,
right down in the corner.
It's a wood. It's a speaker stand that's holding my monitor, and it's catching light. So could do something about that.
It looks good. It's good. Yeah, I would love to have. What camera are you using?
It's a Blackmagic Studio, the big giant screen with an Olympus. What is it? 12 to 50 f 3.5. So it's not very fast.
Yeah, a shorter lens that blurred those out a little bit with the lights and take the monitor out, and so you just got a rack of lights back there with a short depth of field would really stand out. But it looks good. It's good. It's a good frame. Go ahead, Carl, and we'll move on.
Brian, would you say the distance between you and the camera is greater than the distance between you and your rack behind you with your synths? Yeah, so it makes it a bit harder for poker. Yeah, it makes it a bit harder for poker then.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump to Taylor.
I have a face for radio.
What I would say is that you got a lot of stuff going on behind you, and you're kind of competing with it. So that's something that I would try to either soften the depth of field or clean up the background a little bit. But you're just having lots of little things back there makes it harder. Also, it's brighter than you are. So generally, you want that background maybe to have some highlights that are bright, but having the whole background back there brighter than you is something you probably want to try to avoid. You're really close, so you're like really close in shot. So you may want to think about finding a way to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, any other? Let's see here.
I know you guys pointed out that window behind me. That's always been a sore in my shot. Blacking out that window might help as well.
That will definitely help. Yeah. But although you have to figure out what you're going to light it with. Go ahead, Stuart.
This might sound odd, but it might just be a matter of converging lines and perspective, but it actually looks like your camera is tilted. Like it's rolled slightly to one side.
Yeah, it does feel like it's a little rolled.
Yeah. It's just the way that the line from the window, the way from the line from the desk, the way from the line from they're all pointing.
And are you really close to it? What camera are you using?
I upgraded recently, so I'm currently using the Logitech Brio 4K.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like you have it wide open, right? The Logitech is like as wide as it goes, not in brightness, but in the focal length. You haven't zoomed in at all inside the Logitech.
I don't believe I have.
Right,
but
right.
I have to double check the software to be sure.
So what it feels like, it's distorting you just a little bit because it's really, really close to you. So if you with the Brio, a lot of times what we want people to do is get a little further away from it, and then use the tool like webcam setting or whatever, or the Brio software to just zoom in a little bit, because naturally the Brio is designed to go as wide as you might want to, but you can actually pull it in a little bit. Oh no! So you were pulled in a little bit as it was.
I just backed him up a little bit with the request camera control.
Yeah. So
Guy is taking control.
There we go. Yeah. So that is I think that's actually a better frame than when you were quite as close as you were there. Yeah. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so his framing as far as shoulders and head height right now is pretty good, spot on. You can fit a lower third in there. But what I would do is, if you've got a mic stand or a mic arm, is sit back further, like away from the computer. You would need your keyboard and mouse, of course, to come with you. And then use 2 times on the Brio, zoom in 2 times. So you can more control your background. So you don't have to worry. You can actually control what's in your background because you're going 2 times tighter. But you're going to have to move back with your microphone and your keyboard and mouse so you can control zoom.
All right, great work. Let's go to Roscoe. Let's jump to Roscoe here. Excellent. I would love to have maybe even those lights on in the background, but something that it just kind of feels like a dark area back there. Okay. I might try to light that up. You also look a little desaturated, from maybe just. But I
deal with the sun here a lot, so I'm always
right, so it's up and down. Right.
Got this big old chasing my rabbits out here, but I can certainly come in a little bit more.
Absolutely. But having something either what camera are you using?
Brio.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe something of interest, whether it's highlights or those lights on or something, just so that we can kind of feel that
something
background. So
side.
It feels a little dark on my side. Go ahead, Todd.
I've always wanted to say that to Roscoe, just in the back. Any sort of practical would be lovely. Yeah,
you've been waiting for this
moment. I've actually thought it before, but
right.
you just said it, Alex. Yeah. So before you called on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so I can see, I think what's a lamp right up against near the photo collage that's up on the back wall. If that one lamp was on, lighting up the photos, that'd be a little bit out of focus, but that'd be good over your right shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, I think it's good. It's a good setup. Yeah. Next person is Ant. Let's go ahead and here we go. Spotlight hand. Another one that's putting us to shame. That's good.
Not even close.
It's the only thing I'd say is a little bit of balance on one side. I don't think you'd want more more diffusion on the other side, but something over there. It just feels like it's, you got a whole bunch of stuff on one side and not a lot of stuff on the other. Mm-hmm. So, that would be
a cello.
A cello. It'd be funny if we all had.
Would have been a saxophone
somewhere hidden back there. We have stringed instruments, or just somewhere, just like someone's got something, and other people have a cello, and Chris, of course, will have the bass. Anyway, go ahead, Stuart.
The only thing I don't like, and it's the gaffer in me coming out, is being able to see the cable going up beside the stand instead of having it tucked behind or on a clip.
And what camera are you using?
6K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks good. And I tend to want to try to figure out a way to take the arm underneath so I don't see the arm of the mic. But I tend to be wanting to see a clean. I obviously like to see the mic, or don't mind seeing the mic for the quality. But I usually try to hide the arm, like swing the arm far enough under the frame, not to have it.
I actually need one of those arms that you have, the low profile. I'd like to get one of those.
I apologize that it's expensive. I haven't found one that's less expensive that works as well. So, I spent a lot trying to do that. We've talked about. Go ahead, Carl.
So I can see your sound diffusion at the back is orange and black. I'm guessing it's orange and black. Is that being lit? Okay. So I would pick a different backsplash color because you've got like a rusty red at the moment. You want to pick a complementary color to the orange. So just go through the colors and see what complements the orange the best. Oh, you got a filter on your light. Okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, because at the moment you've got 2 different kind of warm tones fighting against each other, where if you take a look at what complements orange in a color wheel, you can spin around it. You can try blue, so blue and orange, or I don't know, American football teams have orange in their color. What's a complementary color that goes with orange in American football teams?
Yeah, exactly. No, it looks
purple.
Good. Purple.
Football, it's always orange and black.
But yeah, I think that I really think that the only thing is that little cable, the balancing the side, playing around with that light. But otherwise, it's great image.
I'd love to get the solid background to not even show my panels back there. That's the next step. It's just to go solid.
Could be, I think that with a shorter depth of field, I think that I like seeing some of the panels there, but
okay.
But yeah, I think that shows you're in the studio, you're doing your thing, especially given your profession. It makes sense. Again, like me, like that, I'm starting to pull back a little bit, try to get a little smaller in frame. You might be just a little close, just a hair close.
Okay.
In that area, but it looks amazing. Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
well done. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump to Guy. Guy's got his bird. Is that a bird dog back there?
It is a bird dog back there. I just added it the other day to test some NDI. It's working pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. I love electronic lights that are out of focus. Like I just think that there's for some reason they're just like this little like there's something going on back there. We don't know exactly what it is. Let's see here.
I would move the scopes to the other side.
Move the scopes. These ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because the scopes are either half in, half out. It's half to
move them over here.
Yeah, I'd like to have them on the other side. Just
this is a door.
Oh.
I think you just. I think the key there is just to remodel. I know that like just for our show. It's
I'm sure you know a general contractor.
Get it in
mirrors do wonders.
Yeah, no, I think I always like the blue background or the purple background there. I think really works. I kind of punches through the with the mic. I would try not to see the knuckle there if I could, but yeah, that little knuckle there. But it's not that big of a deal. Like just having the mic up there. Good soft light. You used to have more of a hair light, I think.
Yeah, it's a little. I think it's getting overpowered now because I added some more lights to the front, and so now it's just wimpy because I had to dial back the exposure. But there is, let's see if I cut over to that and then do a little steering. Let me try and get up to the ceiling up there. So you can see there's an auto pole up there, and then that's that backlight up there.
Right.
It's just one of those little guys, so it's cranked up all the way, but it's not doing much.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a big one that's right out of frame is easiest.
Actually, if you wanted it brighter, you could just bring it down because inverse square will work. So if you can cut the distance out happy, you get 4 times more backlight.
Yeah, it gets into the
monitors.
Gets into the frame though. Yeah, it's getting. I mean, try. I
had to put mine at 10% because no hair.
Like there, see. You see it working?
Well, and it doesn't have to be that much. It's just like a little bit of separation for your hair. It could just be a little closer. Yeah, go ahead, Chris, and then we'll move on.
I've been clicking through. I put up this rule of thirds that I made, and I've been clicking through and, putting various shots into it. And I'm starting to see that some of the shots that we really like, the eyes on that upper third and the chin on the lower third, that I love the concept of quantifying aesthetics.
Right.
And
so now we're going to go to a whole nother level of framing.
No, I think
we should. It's like we get
if
all
you want everything to be consistent,
Yep.
There's your rule. There's your. That's a way to quantify it. The eyes on the upper third, the chin on the lower third.
Right.
And
yeah,
like look at that. Look at that.
Giving away my portrait secrets there, Chris. Stop.
Yeah. But what it does is it leaves room for a lower third.
Right.
He's just trying to make room for those lower Fenwicks. That's
exactly. He's like,
it's all about the Fenwick.
I'm not moving my lower Fenwick.
I'm not saying no.
I can see my bookcases are parallel, which is nice.
Let's do it real quick, and we're gonna move on.
Chris, the thirds rule is bunkum. Swap it over to golden ratio, please.
I thought you were gonna go metric on me.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna. Sorry, we're gonna go to Adam. Let's cut to Adam here. So let's take a look here.
I know a little different from everyone else, but
it really looks
to
nice,
work
though.
with the space that I have.
Good shot, though.
Nice.
Nice
so
monitor. You're just showing off your monitor, aren't you?
Part of it's that too.
Yeah, you spend that much on a monitor. You want it in the frame. That's all I'm saying. You don't want to just put that into the behind the scenes. Go ahead, Carl.
So I was wondering this yesterday. So do you have a filter on a focus filter on yours, or is it actually like a tilt shift you've got going on?
The tilt shift lens. So it's a 24 3.5 on a 5D Mark IV.
So with tilt shift, I would in this particular setup, yesterday you were a little bit more square on. In this particular setup, I'd put the tilt shift going left to right instead of up down. So the iPad will be out of focus, your monitor will be out of focus, but you and your back corner that's lit up with your ATEM Mini Pro, looks like at the back there, they would be in focus. Maybe a little bit of your audio. Is that an audio mixer there as well?
Yeah, it's a Rodecaster.
Yeah, so a little bit that. Yeah, so essentially it'd be your so screen front left to screen back right would be in focus rather than top half focus. It's just because you're on everything you've got at the moment at a diagonal, so you can actually rotate. I know with the 24 you can rotate your tilt part. At the moment you've got up down. So at the moment you've got up down. You can tilt. You can rotate it, of course, on the lens. You can do the screws, rotate it, and go sideways. So this is it's a bit of a thing you have to do, of course, with the 24, because you have to actually unscrew it, rotate it, and then go back. But there's a manual in the manual that tells you how to do it. But you may, instead of going up down tilt, you may want to go left right tilt if you've got diagonals in your shot. But I like the OG iPad with the portrait keyboard monitor. It's nice.
Yeah. So if you look at the actual how it's situated also right now, that's kind of like my layout. So I don't have a lot of depth to work with like you do in your room or Junaid. So I kind of have to do the little tricks too.
No, it's good.
It look more interesting.
In our show, you look a little small just because everyone else is framed larger. But then you wouldn't have the monitor.
Right. So yesterday I physically moved the camera up, but I could also do something like this, where I just use the upstream keyer to kind of zoom me in. So maybe if Chris can put his little overlay.
He comes as a guest, he stays as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know what?
And the only thing that I would do is maybe have a little less headroom in both shots. Just a little less. You have a little bit of headroom. Oh, there you go. Keep going. Well, there we go. That's so nice. So I think that frame looks good, and I like the wider frame to do it at different times. It's just, I know also that eventually we're going to be doing these super sources where if some people are framed wider than others, they won't look as good. They'll have to be right. We just need to make sure everybody's right down the center at least, but we'll have issues if people are not framed up close. But I like that shot. I do like the wide shot I think that there's a place to use that wide shot as well because of just the framing there. I think that even in that one though, again, I would tilt the camera down just a little bit just to have a little less headroom in that area. Otherwise I'd leave it. I think it's a good shot there. But being able to have it like in a show where we're cutting to lots of super sources, I'd probably go to a closer shot, but otherwise it looks great. I like the tilt shift.
What about the lighting? Always feel like
you're blowing out right behind the mic, so it's a little bright, there.
Yeah, it's because there's the window.
Right.
You can see this.
Cement fixes that. Just put blocks on.
But I think your face looks great. You've got that 3-dimensional thing going on. You're not overexposed anywhere. You've got a nice shadow under your jawline, which is, I think everything works on your face.
Yeah, the only thing around the lighting that I would say is finding some way to possibly drop you can get ND for the window. So a roll of ND cut into it, because you don't even have to do it very cleanly because you're not shooting it behind you. So it's just something to, just roll it down over the window of ND and it'll just drop a couple stops out of it. And then that would probably bring that texture back up. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm actually going to have a contrary opinion on that one. I'm not seeing any bleed of the blown out area around the edges of the microphone. So it's like it is right on the edge of
I can see it
but it's not clipped.
I can see it in the scopes.
It looks fabulous the way it is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so the reason why the backcourt, because you've got the window is overexposed, so you can use a 1 or 1.5 diffusion cloth as well, which will look like natural like a curtain, so it still matches a room. You put that between your natural curtain and the window itself, so people on the outside will see it as a curtain as well. But yeah, as Alex was saying, if you go to just a luminance version of yourself with no color, then you'll notice that your back corner there is so bright compared to you. So that's sometimes you want to look at yourself in black and white, just luminance only, and see what you're competing with. And that's another way to know if the light in your room. I can see that your key light looks like a 1 foot by 1/2 foot kind of panel. I would personally suggest getting a much brighter light than turning it around 180 degrees and pointing it at that wall. You've got a beautiful white wall. If you get a much more powerful light and just turn it around 180 degrees and light up that wall, you'll get a really nice soft light on you, which will match the light coming from the window. So it'll actually almost look natural. It won't look like you're lit.
Yeah, and the larger source will definitely, a lot of like specular highlights kind of on your face, and that'll all go away with a softer source, or just something just plowing into that white wall. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it's great. Looks good. It's a really good shot. Let's go to John Preto. John, I feel like you upped your game right before this.
Chris made me do it.
Now, what camera are you using?
Sony A7.
It seems like I see some aliasing on some like scaling aliasing on yours.
Zoom's crushing my blacks. I'm looking at it on the Extreme and it looks beautiful and it looks horrible.
Well, it is.
It seems like the sharpness is really high on the camera. If I had a knob called sharpness, I'd turn it down to 50% of what it is.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that there's something that looks like it's scaling. So when you look at your glasses, and we see you'll see a little stair stepping. It's just a little bit of we're seeing just a little bit of stair stepping. Now what that can be is you may be getting a little bit compressed because, again, complex backgrounds, especially things like that monitor behind you, all of those things become, when you have a lot of things going on, there's a fixed budget for pixels, fixed budget for bandwidth, that Zoom has. At 1080p, I believe it's about 6.5 megs a second. And so if you use them up on your background, with things moving, it's going to start chunking things up in the foreground. And I feel like we're seeing that specifically in your glasses. But I mean, I like the lighting a lot, and I like the look of it a lot. So I like the short depth of field. I like things going on back there. So all the stuff, I like all that stuff there. The framing is good. I might try to get the arm out a little bit, and I'm a big fan of the underslinging it completely under the screen, so I don't see it. Of course, if you're willing to get rid of over the ears, those are always good things to look at there. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just looking at the grid on the microphone, and I'm seeing it almost looks like moire in the color, and I'm wondering if maybe in your Zoom settings, the touch up my video and what have you is switched on at the moment. Whether it's doing some processing in there in the Zoom settings, especially with the changes Zoom's done. I noticed there's a few little tweaks.
Yeah, one thing to note is in my video is touch up my appearance or adjust low light on. No, yeah. And what did you say the camera was again?
Sony A7.
And what is it going through?
Going through an Extreme.
Yeah.
And it looks great on the program monitor on multi-view. It looks
on the program monitor, you don't see and then do you see your program in full frame anywhere?
I can go program feed out.
And you don't see any aliasing on your glasses.
Oh no, on my glasses I do. Yeah, now.
Okay, yeah. So there's aliasing on your glasses. So if you see it there, that means somewhere it's getting scaled. So somewhere it's coming in, and that could be that the Sony may be putting out a 720, and then it's getting scaled up to 1080. So I think that scale up may be what I'm noticing there, but and that'll also cause the moire on your mic. All of that would be caused by and you wouldn't see it in the bokeh in the background. So I'm guessing that there's a scaling operation going on in your. So your camera, my guess is your camera's putting out 1280 by 720, and for whatever reason, the ATEM is not doing a great job at moving it from 720 to 1080. All right, our great work though. It's a huge jump forward from what you had like a day ago. So yeah, John.
Or this morning.
Chris.
Two different studios in my house.
No, that's great. Go ahead. Okay, so John Edelson, go ahead, Ant.
I got a question for you because you're talking about potential scaling, but what would cause this black levels to crush like they're doing right now?
Zoom always crushes them. Like I look really like mine. Zoom always will crush your blacks a bit. Okay. So that's a kind of a known thing. So I tend to pull my blacks up in my signal, in my ATEM just a little bit,
right?
Because Zoom will always increase the contrast just a little bit. It tends to make people pop a little bit, but it is but yeah, that's the issue. Go ahead, John.
Hello.
Hello. And let's see here.
Coming from the new studio.
What I would say, yeah, go ahead, Carl.
So the white balance either of the light or the camera is a little bit off for your skin tone. So it's like a slight tungsten light, but my guess is actually the camera. My guess is you actually do have like a 56K light. So the camera is not set to 56K. So I would usually just factory reset the camera, set it to 56K, and work from there.
The light is very toppy for you. It looks like it's kind of up here, and
It is unfortunately the moment.
Right. So I would, you're just getting shadows across your eyes a bit. So I would, and across your face. So you've got a lot on your forehead and not the rest of your face very much. So I would try to pull it forward. I think that you'll get because you're kind of shadowing in your eyes, and so we'd want to pull that out and forward. The camera looks a lot sharper than what you've had in the past. So it's definitely getting a lot of detail in the beard and everything else. So that looks good. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, when you say eyes, I always like a little bit of specular highlights on the eyes. It just helps us see the eyeball itself.
Yeah. And, can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're talking to us or not there. John, I can't hear you. Were you talking?
If I turn the microphone on, if I only knew how to use this technology,
you see kids these days, if you talk to your
I'll
kids
ask my
sometimes,
kids, see if you could teach me.
Yeah, see if your kids can teach you how to use your Zoom. Yeah.
Well, this is the new studio. I've regained my original studio, but I do have mixed lights here at the moment and a little skylight, so it's going to take a little while to get my lighting together. And it's an old new camera. This is the Zcam E1, which is a micro four thirds. And I supposedly can put a lux in it, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet.
Go ahead,
Ant. I'm not sure what's going on with looks like a red strip light in the upper.
There's like a little red line in your.
I see that.
Our upper right-hand corner over your left shoulder. It looks like I know you're being keyed, so it's your background that's
coming through,
not full.
And I would say your key is eating into your hair a bit. So, and are you doing that in the ATEM?
I'm doing it in the ATEM.
Yeah. So it's a better key than what Zoom does, but it's still eating into it. One of the things you want to think about is doing what we call a dirty key. So especially when you have a background back there, and if you made it a little bit darker, you wouldn't notice it. But what I'll do is I won't try to key it completely transparent. So I'll just do a key I'll neutralize the green, which the Blackmagic does really well, but I'll pull back how hard I'm pushing on that key, and that's pretty cool.
I don't know what that.
Okay, there you go. And so that key works great. So like now you have tons of hair detail. So that's that is your now if you
this is my electronic haircut.
Is that clip? Did you just move clip? Is that what you moved? That's clip, right? Now move clip all the way back up again. Go back to clip. Go back to where you were before. Now grab your gain and pull it just a little bit. Let's see what happens here. You should have clip and gain.
Oops. Like a little green.
Yeah. So what you want to try to do, there you go, is you want to get rid of the green, and you might have a background back there, but you don't want to use clip very hard. You want to use clip as soft as you can, and then use the gain to kind of just pull it back and let it be semi-transparent back there. So you get rid of the green, let it be semi-transparent, and then what you'll do is you'll recover a lot of your hair detail, but right now you're still losing it.
Well, I think for office hours, now that I'm in the back of my studio, I can put, not a green, I can move the green screen, have some stuff, and because I know I know I will never make you happy, Alex, with my green screen.
I would just get rid of it altogether. I just put a gray, if you replace the green screen with a gray screen, you would have all the hair detail that you needed.
Well, the gray screen behind me is one of the ones that a guy does with the one button studio. So light hits it and goes in strange angles. So I'll get a normal gray screen.
Like, we find that the regular gray ones, you get tens of hair detail. Go ahead, Carl.
So I know that your background's a green screen. So, but with your camera, you want to make sure, essentially you want to put a bubble level, or imagine there's a bubble level on top of your camera. So make sure it's parallel to the ground and it's parallel. So you don't have to do it now, but in the future, if you set up your camera, so essentially you want to set your camera's height. So your camera is perfectly level with the ground, but the height will be dependent on your headroom. Gotcha. So you go up and down with the headroom to get the height correct, but the camera itself should be essentially have a bubble level on top of the camera and make sure the camera is completely level in all axes. Because the only problem with green screen is we can tell which way the camera is pointing, but only because of your face, not because of the background. So it kind of distracts us. If you have a completely level camera, it makes it really hard to know you're on a green screen.
Except for the hair.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Brian.
I had a question. My monitor finally came back to life, so it's not a black hole back there. How does that?
Oh, that does look better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, that definitely fits in because it just kind of feels like it's almost an extension of that.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to look.
Yeah. Now we have Stuart. Oh, Todd, go ahead.
I just wanted to know if this works better for Chris. Is all.
There we go. It's in our mind. You just have to go poodaloo, 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 poodaloo. So that's great. Stuart. Okay, Stuart is our I think our final one. So looks good. I feel like I want something more back there on, like just some lights or something in the background.
I have thought about putting a little light to point at the camera, but the thing is I change which camera I'm putting back there, and the curtain that is almost touching the camera, it goes in and out of the daytime, and I didn't do that.
No.
I don't know. Okay. But while I have everyone's attention and I'm looking at Vienna's question that we haven't gotten to. Vienna, Bunnings, because I can see where you are, so I know there's a Bunnings near you. LED Vance panels, that's what I'm using up there. It's a 1200 by 300 mil panel, so it is a really wide panel for really soft lighting. And to go really, really cheap, there's my old camera, and that's a downlight with an LED that's upside down on a light stand.
There we go.
And that's doing this light here.
No, that's great. Go ahead, Carl.
I'll go back there.
So,
there we go.
As far as, because if you take a look to your screen right, you've got the camera, which is fine, but most cameras are going to be black. The only thing I would say is go down to Bunnings, get yourself some black spray paint, take that microphone, paint it up.
No, I want the contrast there, and I've deliberately got it like because the lens
if
is
you
wide open tonight, so that's
like a little
different color and it's different brightness.
Yeah, something to pull out the camera, I think would just balance out the frame a little bit. But having a little bit of light back there, I think it's stark, which is a look, but it's stark compared to everything else we have there.
I should point out to TJ in the chat, that's not the Scion, that's the XL-H1.
Yeah.
So that's the Canon.
Go ahead, Chris.
And the camera is the VG900, and the lens is a 35mm Pentax f2 wide open.
That's great. Yeah.
There's a difference between a prop that's placed and a background element that happens to be there. Your camera looks like a prop that's been placed, as opposed to I'm in Stuart's lab and he's got, he's testing cameras today. And it's a very fine line. It's finer than the line over my eyes right now. And I don't know how to change that. I don't know what, but it feels like a prop and not like I'm in your lab. And I'm open to suggestions on how to make it to cross over that line.
On whether I've got the camera pointing at something, like I moved it to point at the old camera and the light, whereas I would normally have it sitting just like it's just sat on the tripod in the background.
Good, Carl.
Yeah, so a YouTube trope would be if it's on a shelf, then it's part of the set. If it's on tripods, then it's being used, and it doesn't look like, as Chris said, it's being set up. So just having like some black shelves or just a shelf or even a plinth back there to put the camera on rather than a tripod, it makes it look less set up than more.
Yeah, so
when there's a black curtain there to hide the privacy of the stuff that's on the wall behind me. So
When-
that's not changing.
When you go to the camera rental house
So
and they have the test room where they have the charts on one end and the camera and it's on
Camera rental.
well, you know, that's the way
Camera
most of us
rental?
get.
People
That's the way
rent
most of us
cameras?
get
I
our
thought we
cameras.
just buy them.
If there was a workbench back there and the camera was just on like a
hi-hat.
little hi-hat, yeah, or something that was permanently mounted, like I bring it in, I set it up, I check it on the charts before it goes out for rental.
Yeah. The what was I going to say? I would warm up your your color just a little bit. It's just the that would be the one little, like just ever so slightly.
Hang on.
A little too much.
That's the middle setting. So the camera
No,
is
it's
set
too
to
warm.
daylight. Yeah. I've been leaving it on.
That's
what's supposed to be
it's somewhere in between there.
6500, but the camera says it's
Right.
closer to 5700.
Yeah,
so
so something hidden between the two, I think, would be great. But otherwise, it looks great.
Yep.
It
it
leaps
looks
and
a lot
bounds.
better than when I was using the little baby, the security camera that was. Yeah, there we go. That's the camera I was using when I first joined in.
Definitely big jump. And also for Vienna, one answer to that also, if you're ready to go a little past shop lights or consumer lights, is the thing that we've they're not as inexpensive, but for cost effective, Nan light is something that we're using the Pavo Tube 6Cs in a lot of things because they're small and easy. I might even have one. I have
This is
them
the
here.
look.
So the yeah, exactly, Chris. But the these have a lot of different colors and all kinds of other things. Our new kits that we're kind of concocting right now, we send 2 of these out in our kits. We're going to send 4 of them out soon so that we can do accent lights for 2 of them. Like 2 of them are just somewhere you can throw in the background and just put them out there. They're both battery and not. So those are good. We bought a lot of them, but there's a lot of different ones there that are relatively cost effective. The ones that I have here are 100 Bs, and we also have a lot of 68 Bs, probably 20 or 30 of them. So, and we find that, especially in that lower cost area, the under $200 or $300 range, that Nan lights we like better than Aperture. Once we go over about $250 to $1,000, we find them to be close to each other as far as quality, but the Aperture software is better than Nan light. And then, so it just depends on where you're going in all of those little bits and pieces. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, just one thing I should have mentioned. Shading the lens, and I'll just reach forward and I'll remove it. So shading the lens helps to increase your contrast. So a lot of film lenses came with the detachable, like little cover.
Lens hood.
And
Lens
that
hood.
also helps. Yeah, lens hood. The word just got away from me, Carl. But yeah, that helps as well. And film mirror lenses like that one, you can often find them.
Yeah, that's great. And then I think we had one more question floating around here from Keenan Campbell. He said, when will Heil release the Office Hours edition PR40 painted matte black with the Office Hours logo? Yeah, exactly. That's the next step. Go ahead, Jesse.
So the PR31 is painted matte black, doesn't have the Office Hours logo, but that is why I chose it. So anyway.
Yeah, that's great. All right, another Ruthless review.
Office
And
Hours
as usual,
sticker
we've run over. So our Ruthless reviews tend to be long-winded. USDZs tomorrow and education, of course, on Saturday. I just want to thank all the producers. Great set of questions again. And what's great is that there's like this reservoir of questions. I'm wondering like where they all come from, because we go, hey, we're a little low on questions. I'm wondering if the producers just have them stacked back there, just waiting for the right time to just unleash them on us, because we get all these great questions, and they're great questions when we say, hey, we got a little more time. And then really, really well done by the panelists. I felt like today we had a lot of really good direct answers, and we were just kind of clipping, at what we were doing. So really, really good work. So anyway, thanks to everyone who's watching. And we're now going to jump into the post.